power on.
It's TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast.
The Golden Stallion, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, still don't have a Star Wars name. Come on, listeners of TIE Fighter Renegades, come up with some Star Wars names. I don't know. Every other Star Wars podcast does that. Not that I need to copy them. I don't need to copy anybody. I'm an originator, goddammit. But I wouldn't mind. So if you come up with something clever, hook it up. And don't just do it for me. Do it for my co-host, of course, the one and only Robin Freebeard. Robin, welcome once again to TIE Fighter Renegades. We are back.
Hell yeah.
Woo. So May has been a hell of a month for Star Wars, and we're going to get into, for a lot of reasons, we're going to get into some of the big stuff. Obviously, the Vanity Fair article that came out, well, sort of just came out, but we'll talk about all of that a little later on. We got a fascinating, and I can't wait to hear actually Rob's take on this. We got a fascinating fan production of the month to get into. We're going to do some reminiscing on somebody cue the Little River Band. I'm actually going to see them. I'm going to see them in a couple months, actually. Somebody cue the Little River Band because we're going to reminisce on episode 1, because it has been 20 years as of this month, May 2019, since, well, I don't know if everybody would want to say since we were graced with that movie. Some other people might have other words, but regardless, since we were graced with that, we're going to get into that. But unfortunately, we do have to open up with something somber. And that being, well, we lost one of the, shall we say, the Star Wars family. Actually, I think technically he died on April 30th of this year of 2019, but it was announced on May 2nd. And that being, of course, the absolutely lovable, inimitable Peter Mayhew, who played Chewbacca. And I haven't even seen yet where they said what exactly he died from. He died at the age of 74. I know they didn't report it right away, what he had died of, but Peter Mayhew was a giant in every sense of the word, and he literally had giantism. And it's pretty amazing for someone to go to 74 years old, actually, with that condition. I mean, you think of like Andre the Giant and a lot of others where they die usually very much younger in life than that. So I'm very pleased that we got to see him play the role of Chewbacca, of course, one more time in The Force Awakens, and was also a mentor for the new Chewbacca in The Last Jedi. I kind of wish he was alive to have seen see this whole saga kind of play out, or at least the Skywalker saga version of it play out. But certainly somebody that's going to be missed. I mean, Rob, what were your thoughts on Peter Mayhew? I mean, certainly one of the most beloved people in Star Wars, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and he was, probably one of like the biggest advocates for the fans that I can think of. I mean, and he had such a huge heart and love for the Star Wars community. And he brought that across in his appearances. And, I think he went to every celebration that there ever was. And he was just a beautiful man.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree completely. And it's, I mean, certainly I know, like you said, at Celebration, a lot of other events, I mean, he was just there, just loving it. And really, everybody had kind words. Mark Hamill, Harrison Ford, of course, just talked about how he's just such a sweet person. And I mean, next to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of, you have a lot of these kinds of guys like Anthony Daniels, who's just so into the fans, or even, this is terrible. Wicket. I'm trying to think of his name.
Warwick Davis.
Yeah. Warwick Davis. I mean, these guys who are just always there for them, and really, again, Peter Mayhew was certainly in that number.
But, I mean, and the thing is that the thing that stood out with Mayhew is that he did this despite all of like the very debilitating physical ailments he had. And I understand he'd been doing pretty poorly in the last, several years.
Sure.
And, whereas a lot of these other people, like Anthony Daniels, who, are still in great health, and, they certainly have the ability and a drive to go out there and there many times where you'd see, Mayhew, he'd still be coming to conventions, whether he was walking around with a cane or in a wheelchair, like in the last Celebration. I mean, he was dedicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no doubt about it. I certainly, Chewbacca is, equally as far as the characters go. And I mean, I know, a lot of people want to say, well, this guy's in this huge fursuit, how much was he really bringing to bear with that? And I mean, I think, you can't, I mean, just the way Chewbacca moves, there's so much that you have to, and you can see it with, of course, the new actor playing him. There's so much you have to emulate to make it legit. And that was all Peter Mayhew. I mean, there is real acting chops on display there. I mean, this is, in my opinion, this is a genuine loss, one of the biggest losses, and one of too many in recent memory, of course, for within Star Wars. Chewbacca, again, just a totally fan favorite character, and so much of that was Peter Mayhew. And unfortunately, I never had the opportunity. Some of the Star Wars actors, some of the Star Wars family, I've had the pleasure of meeting. He was not one of the ones that I ever really got to meet, though I'm well aware of his reputation at a lot of these events. But in any case, very sad, of course. Condolences out to the family for Peter Mayhew, the Mayhew family, and just a real loss. But Star Wars, rolls on, and he is certainly one of the reasons that it has rolled on for so long. I think without question. So, anything else on that, Rob?
No, I think I like you said, I think we've said what we had to say about that. It was a real bummer when it happened. It certainly wasn't, again, considering the health he's been in, it wasn't surprising. And I think we kind of saw it coming, but it was no less heartbreaking for its passing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I suppose the one kind of weird justice that we get is that years ago, the character of Chewbacca was killed off within the continuity, but of course that has completely changed since Disney, really took over. And anyway, it's
I think that's a good point to bring up, because I mean, Disney gets a lot of flack for basically resetting the Star Wars universe, but people don't remember the pure outrage that happened when they killed off Chewbacca's character in the comic books, and that's something that they corrected.
Yeah, I really think that was the right move to bring that character back, or to get rid of that, and maybe even like I kind of wonder, I could almost believe that Disney, like, that might have been the first thing that came to mind for them when they said, okay, are we going to reboot this continuity? What are we going to do with all these books and comics that we have out there? And they said, well, if Chewbacca's dead, we can't keep running with this. We're just going to have to wipe all this out. Like, I could really imagine it being that big of a deal. So anyway, well, speaking of comic books, why don't we start talking up? We'll go from that, and we'll get right into our comic books for the comic book update, which not many other Star Wars podcasts do. But we're going to review some of these. And because, wow, I mean, does it, for some reason, I felt like there weren't this many comic books coming out for Star Wars over the past, like, maybe year or two. And now it's like we're just getting flooded. I mean, there's so many concurrent series going at the same time. You have Darth Vader, Dark Visions. You had the two Han Solo series that were running. We have, of course, Dr. Aphra, the main Star Wars title. There's all of the Age of titles that have been coming out. There's Star Wars Adventures. I mean, there's a lot. Like, they might as well have their own Star Wars imprint over at Marvel.
Right. Yeah, and like with the Star Wars Adventure stuff, it's not even with one a publisher either, because isn't that that's by IDW, isn't it?
So, oh yeah, right. Adventures is by IDW, which is interesting in and of itself. Right. I don't know how that deal ended up working out or why, but that is kind of an oddity. So, but within all of these, and of course, there's also the Galaxy's Edge comics. There's the TIE Fighter comic that's running right now. Some of these we're going to let the storylines for them really like finish out and play out so that we can give them a proper review, especially the TIE Fighter series, which I'm feeling a little worried about. I was really excited for this.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And I don't know what exactly is going on with it right now, but anyway, we'll let it play out and then we'll get the review.
Right, and I think we're getting the last issue in the current storyline of the main Star Wars comic next month too.
Okay. All right. So that'll be a good time to go over that.
Right.
Now,
I do want to bring up though, real
yeah.
quick, is that it looks like they finally finished off the storyline they were doing with Dr. Aphra, and if the new issue from just this last week is any indication, they're heading back in the right direction.
Aha. Okay. Well, we might end up talking about that, or I pretty much guarantee we'll be talking about that
Yeah,
next
there's
month.
not much to talk about right now because we've only got one issue so far of this new storyline they're just setting up, and
Right.
it has the return of a favorite character of both Brian and mine.
Aha.
So
Yeah, I think it begins with a T. I'm gonna
yes,
guess. Yeah, and
yes.
that's so. All right, so I think we're with a good time for that because Dr. Aphra has been. Well, at one point it was like the best comic they had going on the regular. It then kind of it started to tank pretty hard.
Yeah, when they did that 000, I mean, which I went back and looked, and that storyline has been running for 13 issues.
That's insane.
And like we've literally had over a year of just crap.
That is insane. Absolutely insane. Well, anyway, so now, this brings up a point though. So the ones I do want to talk about are the Age of series that's been going on. We originally had Age of Republic. Now we're into Age of Rebellion. And these are one shot. Usually it's one character, except for there was like an Age of Rebellion special, which did a bunch of different characters recently. And I kind of wonder if I'm loving these, and we're getting like a couple every comic book day, every Wednesday. I'm kind of wondering if the reason I'm loving them is because it's one story, it's one and done in one comic. This is how comic books used to be when I was a kid, in the 80s. I mean, usually you didn't have Superman stories that went multiple issues, right. Or whatever character. I remember some Batman comic books where it was a huge deal. I mean, after years where they would do like something that maybe would go 3 issues. Like that was just unheard of. Right. Not that they didn't do big comic book events, but that was just in a main title. That was kind of a weird thing to have happen. But yeah, so I think I'm really liking that this is getting back to where, because, you want to review these comics like we were just talking about, Dr. Aphra and the Star Wars ongoing and all that. But to really understand everything that's going on, you kind of have to wait. It feels like months. Yeah, because you're only getting bits and pieces. And I think there's a way you can do the multi-month writing where it's not that way, but that's how it's ending up with a lot of the Star Wars titles.
Yeah, certainly they've done it before. I mean, like some of the past Vader comics have just been, excellent ongoing stories. Right. And it's kind of odd that, that these Age of comic one-shots have turned out so well because, the first few years that Marvel's had the Star Wars license, their one-shots have been terrible. Yeah. I'm thinking of like the DJ comic and the C-3PO comic. Yeah, the Beckett comic. I mean, they were all terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. But these have been honestly fantastic.
They have.
Yeah. I mean, almost every one. I've really enjoyed. I've also, and we reviewed other ones in the past. Like the Anakin Skywalker one was very well done.
Right.
And I love the write-up, like the essay at the end of each of these comics has been very insightful. And I don't know, like whatever character they're concentrating on, they'll just do a little, few paragraphs on them. And it's interesting, especially if I were a new Star Wars fan and I'd be reading that. I mean, it'd just be a treasure trove of information that I'd be getting from these essays at the end of these comics that are so cool.
And that used to be a huge thing in comic books too, because I remember back, like especially with like Dark Horse comics and stuff, when they did, sort of licensed properties, they always put good stuff in the back of the comic book that kind of, highlighted, the production of the comic and, what it went into it. And sometimes they did, sort of little backstories on different characters and whatnot. And so, this is like, and in a way, this is like a big return to form for Star Wars comics since it left Dark Horse.
Yeah. No, I agree. This is next to like the original Lando comic that Marvel did recently, I guess it was 2015, actually. These have been some of the best stuff that they've really been running. And I agree, it's a return to form because Star Wars, when you do it right, completely shines in the comic book format. I mean, it's arguably, I would say, next to video games and movies, it's where it's at its best, pretty much every time. So these, right now we're in the Age of Rebellion series, and there's quite a few. There's Age of Rebellion, of course, there's Boba Fett, then there's actually a Tarkin comic book of all things, Han Solo, Jabba the Hutt, Lando Calrissian, Princess Leia, and of course there is the special comic, which has a bunch of little stories, including one with, like I mentioned, with IG-88 that I thought was brilliant. Which one, give me a couple of these that really stood out for you, Rob?
Well, like the Lando one, I think is probably my top pick.
Yeah,
all these, if anything. I mean, like they're continuing to build on that relationship between Lando and Lobot. In fact, even referenced that he's still trying to find a cure for Lobot's implants that have basically taken over. And so it's just really like it was just a good, and it was good to get some background on like his involvement in Cloud City. And
it was nice to get more Cloud City. I mean, that alone was worth it. Yeah,
right. Because we never it was in Empire Strikes Back. We kind of get a glimpse of what life like is there for just a short time, and then everything goes crazy. So we don't really get kind of a good look into what life on the city is like.
Yeah exactly. I thought that one was very well done. What's another one that really hit you?
And the Grand Moff Tarkin one, that was just, man, like not that you particularly like Tarkin is a character whose head you want to get into, but it really just kind of shows off just the barely restrained barbarity and brutality of the man, to the point where he's like having like these visions in his head of brutalizing his troops.
Yeah, so this was my top pick actually of the bunch, because I was amazed. Like, and the funny thing is, he's having visions in his head, but when you're reading it, you don't know that he's just thinking it. You think it's actually happening first, right?
Right.
And he starts taking off his uniform, and he's just like, basically, you have Alexander Cushing being, or Peter Cushing. I'm sorry, Alexander Cushing. That's a poet, but Peter Cushing. But Peter Cushing, he's just this chiseled old man, and you totally believe that he's like beating the crap out of this officer, and he just rips the shirt off and everything. And I don't know, Marvel's got something with making these characters, shirtless and sexy, like what they did with Han Solo in the main comic. It's pretty crazy.
Captain Beefcake.
Yeah, Captain Beefcake. Yeah. So now we have Grand Moff Beefcake, and but it was. I mean, I'm just reading it, and I'm like, oh, I'm just amazed that I'm totally believing it. That yes, this is exactly what Tarkin would do. And I thought it was it expanded upon a moment between Rogue One and A New Hope, really. And it even expanded upon what happens within A New Hope, where, of course, they're aiming at Alderaan and all of this. And I just thought it was brilliant. It's amazing. Go ahead.
It expands on the Tarkin novel, too, because we get a lot of his backstory in that novel about, the hunts that he and his family used to go on. And here you're actually seeing it in the comic on the page, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, he finally gets, was it Eriadu, I think is his home world. Yeah, you really get to see that in the flesh. And it's pretty amazing. Yeah, I love that. That's one of my top books, too, is the Tarkin book. I thought that was so well done by James Luceno. But yeah, the Tarkin comic really stood tall. And again, amazing that they can just take like moments from, and we're probably going to get into this a little bit more with some further reviews we have down the line, but not of comic books, but how they can just take moments within these movies and just expand upon them a little bit. And you get this incredible story that comes out of it. And Tarkin did that particularly well. I also agree with you. The Lando Calrissian one was one of the ones at the top of my list. Jabba the Hutt. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that like that was like the surprise on how good the Jabba the Hutt comic was.
It does make you wonder just how good a Jabba the Hutt movie would be.
Right? I mean, and just like because like in Return of the Jedi, you don't really get the idea of like, they portray Jabba the Hutt, of course, as like this big crime lord and this criminal genius, but you don't actually see him being a criminal genius.
Right.
And just like this comic shows off just, his personality. I mean, like, you have these characters are wanting to strike a deal with them, and he's going, "Oh, is this what you want?" He drinks the whole thing down and says, "Oh, sorry, that's it, no more."
Yeah.
Fuck you.
Yeah. Yeah, it was brilliant. Fantastic comic, and it really did make me think. When I read it, I was like, wait, like, could a Jabba the Hutt movie actually work? I mean, I mean, it'd be weird with the speaking of Hutties and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but yeah, I don't know. Well, anyway, how about the Boba Fett comic? What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I have to say that's probably the lowest on my list for this one. It wasn't a terrible comic, but it just wasn't really that interesting to me.
I kind of feel like that was them doing it right, though, because I mean, they totally play him off as being completely amoral,
right?
And very quiet. He says very little. His just reputation just kind of stands. I mean, it's not twin engines of destruction or anything like that, but I don't know. It felt, to me, it kind of felt right. Like, and in fact, even in the essay at the end, they've said what I've said many times. Why do people love this character? It's just because he's so fucking cool. Like, he just looks so cool.
Yeah,
and
I mean, they show that off. I just felt like the weak point was basically the foil, his opponent.
Oh yeah,
It was not interesting in the least.
That's true. Yeah, I agree with you on that. That is true. But I mean, at least I feel like they did Boba Fett right, and actually like Boba Fett that we expect from the original trilogy, not maybe so much Boba Fett from Clone Wars, which I appreciated.
Right.
So so that one was pretty cool. The Princess Leia one, I enjoyed that. It's basically her getting into her Bouche character,
right?
And being a bit of a scoundrel, and she did it well. Lando's in it, and so that upped the stakes of the game. And I thought it was a comic that really worked.
Yeah, and it gets you another slice of the window of that time between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, which is cool.
Yeah, actually, that was another thing, because that is a rare time that we, even in the old EU, we didn't get much except for the Great Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah, well, that and the original what's her name? The comic that was originally in the comic book strips, the newspaper strips.
Oh yeah. Yep, we would get that too.
Yeah,
and there was in the new continuity. I mean, there's been a couple books that have touched on it. Like there was the original Princess, not Hard Target. I forget that's a Van Damme movie. Anyway, there was one of those Journey to the Force Awakens books that was about Princess Leia.
Well, there was that Luke Skywalker book too, which was unfortunately not all that great.
Yeah.
Heir to the Jedi, I think it was.
Yeah, that was like the first one of the new canon.
Yeah,
we were just like, oh, this isn't good.
Right?
This isn't going to work. To be fair, I mean, before anybody emails us and says it, I know it was a book originally meant for the old EU, and they had to kind of convert it. But still, anyway. But I enjoyed the Princess Leia comic. Again, the special comic, all those little short stories were very well done. I mean, this has just been a great series. Even the Age of Republic ones with Count Dooku and Anakin Skywalker, and go down the list. I haven't really read one that I thought was really bad.
Yeah. One of my favorites was the Qui-Gon one.
Oh yeah. That was good. Even the General Grievous one, which that should have been the weakest. Just like Jabba the Hutt, that should have been the weakest sauce in the world, and no, it ended up being like very enjoyable for what it was. Yeah. So
although I have to say, like, I think Count Dooku kind of suffered from the same thing that the Boba Fett comic did. Really just didn't really have a very interesting, it showed off how cool the character is, but it didn't really, have an interesting. He wasn't really doing anything all that interesting.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah,
he's just kind of tricking that Jedi,
right? Yeah. And that Jedi was just kind of like a throwaway character, and
Yeah, I think in light of what other things we're going to review later on in the show, I think it's particularly interesting because you get to see, so later on we're going to review Claudia Gray's Master and Apprentice, as well as the audio play of Dooku Jedi Lost. And I think getting to see just how sinister this guy had become in that comic book played well at the time within context of those two productions.
That's true.
Again, that we'll talk about later. So yeah, but I hear you. Standalone, not as great, but overall, the series, the Age of series, has been pretty good.
Yeah, it's been
we got the
excellent.
Go ahead. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's just yeah.
So anything, any other points you want to bring up about the Age of comics?
I don't think so.
Yeah, we got the Luke Skywalker one coming. I hope they don't flub that, because
there's a Darth Vader one coming out too. Yeah.
So looking forward to both of those. Those should be kind of grand finales. I don't think, were they going to go? I can't remember if they were going to go further than that.
I thought that there was going to be 3 different Age of series, but I can't remember. Well, are they doing Age of Resistance? I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't recall. I'd have to look it up. Honestly, if they wanted to do like an Age of Empire or something, well, that naming would be kind of weird. But if they wanted to, if they want to do something like that, like, I'll tell you, I'd love to see a one shot with Iden Versio, from of course, from Battlefront. I could think of a lot of characters I'd love. They could just keep doing this forever.
Yeah,
like, just they are doing one shot.
They are doing an Age of Resistance comic.
Okay.
It's going to be starting in July with the first one's going to be on Finn.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. Hell, even with Age of Resistance, they could still do Iden Versio. I'd love it.
This is interesting. There's going to be a Snoke comic.
Oh, see, now there you go. That bar just got raised. Yeah. I mean, if he's actually dead, well, now there's no reason to not explore what the fuck he was. So yeah, give us the comic that tells the story.
Exactly.
I'm totally down for this. So this is, folks, if you're looking, okay, wait, what Star Wars comics do I read right now? I think it's very easy to say, and Rob, you can let me know if you agree. These are the comics to be looking at. These are the ones to get your hands on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. We can, unless there's anything else, we can bump on from that. We'll keep an eye out for the Age of Resistance comics, which sound very exciting. Yeah, why don't we get into the big story of May, which is this Vanity Fair article with 16 pictures. These pictures are really what everybody is looking at. The pictures are by Annie Leibovitz, who she very famous photographer, famous for other things too. And the story by Lev Grossman, who is that the person that writes The Magician?
I have no idea.
I think, yeah, it's a great book series. Anyway, if it's that Lev Grossman, but that's me. Anyway, so, okay. Yeah. Great. Actually, it's like one of the few good things the Sci-Fi Channel has ever done. And I think they're still doing too, or is a series based on those books. Anyway, but we're here for Star Wars, folks. So Star Wars Episode 9, we've got it coming in December. Finally, we're getting a lot of the news, the flood of news that we expected to happen, honestly, after Avengers Endgame came out. And this Vanity Fair article, which they do, Rob, they do these like every movie, right?
Yeah, well, this has become pretty much a tradition since the prequels.
Sure, since Episode 1, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, Episode 1. In fact, I still have that issue, and it was and that's really is what people are after is Annie Leibovitz's photography, because it is fantastic. In fact, I went back and looked back at that not too long ago, and there's it is something special, because there's photos from that issue that you still don't even really see online.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I could believe that, and I agree with you. It is special. This, as of this recording, like the issue for Episode 9 will have just come out on newsstands. There have been like previews online, but yeah, that kind of raises the point of why to really collect these, and certainly why you've been collecting them. So first blush, now you got to look at these 16 photos, Rob.
Yeah,
and just an overall abstract. What do you think? I mean, is this generating excitement for you, or the opposite?
I would like, and I'm hoping there's going to be more in the actual issue. In fact, I'm expecting there to be, but yeah, I'd have to say, I'm not as excited as I had been about seeing, the past Vanity Fair issues. And I think for me, those generated more excitement than these photos are.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that these are terrible photos, but yeah, I am still being cautious in managing my expectations about Episode 9.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I think, honestly, except for one of these pictures, I mean, I think everybody who sees the picture of Lando on the, in the cockpit of the Falcon, of course, that's great. But other than that, only one of these pictures really gave me any kind of like interest. And that, of course, is the photo confirming the Knights of Ren. And finally getting to see them, even though I'm not like 100% impressed with what I see.
Right.
At the very least, I'm glad we're getting some fucking payoff on that.
Right.
And that, to me, that's the picture. That's the real winner here. That stands out. So with that picture, I mean, I'm feeling a little bit better about episode 9. There's some stuff. There's some points of it that feel J.J. Abrams in a bad way, in my opinion. Just in an overall where I'm not feeling it so much. But I mean, there's nothing like that's really distressing to me here. At the very least, I'm not walking away with a negative feeling, over it. But
so what do you think
anyway,
about how the Knights of Ren look?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not like, I mean, it doesn't look like they're using lightsabers.
Yeah, it looks like just like a band of thugs.
Yeah,
like they could be anybody.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, I don't know if they're going to be, in the old EU, you had, what was it, like vibroblades or whatever, or you had those like the Sith would have these chemical lined swords that could deflect a lightsaber, so it looked like a lightsaber fighting with a sword. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up the weapons, because I just remembered that somebody caught something rather interesting in that picture. I guess the character in the middle of the photograph that's holding like that axe thing.
Yeah.
That axe showed up in Solo Star Wars story. It was part of Dryden Voss's, collection. And they had 2 of them that were standing on either side of the Mandalorian armor.
Okay, so
nobody knows if they're just reusing a prop and they weren't really thinking about people making connections there, but people are making connections.
Sure, maybe that it's some kind of Sith artifact, because we know Dryden Voss had those.
Well, but I think people are trying to make a Mandalorian connection just by the fact that it was being displayed as, along with the Mandalorian armor that he had on display.
I see. Well, even then, you could still kind of have a Sith connection, because, and we're going to talk about this after this, we have other movie news that has to do with that. Basically, it's confirmed that there is going to be a Knights of the Old Republic movie. And I mean, for those that remember, that not that they are going to follow Legends if they don't want to, but in the Tales of the Jedi comic book series, the Mandalorians thousands of years ago, worked with basically the Sith Lord de jure, that being Exar Kun, and Ulic Qel-Droma. So yeah, I don't know. Anyway, just tossing that out there, but I wouldn't necessarily expect anybody to go that deep on it. What do you think? I mean, I'm more inclined to think that they just there was an extra prop around, and JJ's like, oh, that looks cool. All right, put that.
Yeah, exactly. That was my initial thought. I mean, I like that people are this aware and are catching these things. I can appreciate the lengths that people go to speculate about this stuff.
Yeah,
it gets a little ridiculous. But yeah, I'm not reading anything into it.
Yeah. Now, is the planet they're on? Is that the one? Is that Pisana? Like, we're getting another. I think they said in the article that that's a whole, because everybody was like, oh, is that Tatooine? Is that Jakku? But I think it's actually a wholly other desert planet. It's just another fucking desert planet.
I think they have confirmed that it's a new planet. It's another desert planet.
Yeah. I think the name of it's Pisana, because I know they're filming in Jordan.
Wadi Rum, which is actually the same place that they're filming the Dune movie right now.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Where they filmed Lawrence of Arabia.
Yep. Very famous. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about some of the other pictures here. Like I said, I think the Knights of Ren picture is the real standout there. But then we have a first look at Kerry Russell's character, or at least the masked character, that being. And we were talking before we started recording, you and I, Robin, and we're like, wow, what a ridiculous fucking name, or at least that's what I felt, of Zorii Bliss. What do you think about this? Give me a breakdown on this picture of Kerry Russell's Zorii Bliss.
Honestly, my gut instinct is this is just another background character that looks really cool, that is, being photographed and highlighted just because she looks cool. And I don't think she's going to have really any impact on the story, much like, Zam Wesell or Constable Zuvio from Force Awakens and Attack of the Clones, respectively.
Right. Yeah, actually, like Zam Wesell, like that was the first thing that came to my mind, and I'm sure that has something to do with the color purple there, because I mean, you got to understand, like, this is the crazy thing with episode 2. We're going to reminisce on episode 1 later, but episode 2, there were some oddities with this for a million reasons. I guess like any Star Wars movie, but like Dark Horse made an entire comic book, a one shot, and a long one shot about Zam Wesell or Zam Wesell, whatever the hell her name was, or how it's pronounced. And, like, I remember talking with friends like, oh yeah, she's going to be this big character. And she was in the movie for what, a couple minutes,
right.
like barely, and she gets offed, and so
right.
I wouldn't put it past it. Go ahead.
Yeah. To be fair though, it's not like they haven't, done this sort of thing in the past and made the character much bigger. I'm thinking of like, we only got like literally just a couple of brief seconds of seeing Aura Singh in episode 1. And
right.
She turned out being such a huge character in the Clone Wars animated series, which was great.
Yeah. Right. And would be instrumental really in the formation of Boba Fett.
Right.
Among other things. And yeah, I agree with you. That's a great point to bring up, that something greater can be done later on.
Right.
Yeah.
So far as for episode 9, I am not expecting anything for this character at all.
Yeah. I mean, Kerry Russell is white hot, as far as in Hollywood right now. So even just having her name attached, I think that, I mean, I could see them just going for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not surprising because like she got her start from J.J. Abrams. Right.
And yeah, well, that's a good point to bring up too. That's where that relationship would really start.
Right,
so, I mean,
Felicity. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are very excited about that character, but you're thinking that it's largely just unfounded and this isn't doing anything for you.
Yeah. I mean, until I see the movie, and show me the money, Disney.
Yeah. Right on. Yeah. I mean, the character looks cool. I'll give it that, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with that means absolutely nothing, especially in the sequel trilogy. Looking at you, Captain Phasma.
Right. Oh man. Yeah. Talk about an unused, untapped, I should say.
Yeah. Underutilized.
Underutilized. Thank you. Yeah. Underutilized character. All right, here, I'm just going to, just a spark just went off in my head. I'm going to toss this out there. Here's what I would love to happen with Zori Bliss. I would love to find out that Zori Bliss is actually, that basically Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc pit, got became transgender and became Zori Bliss. and that's why this character looks so badass and is wielding the double blasters like his daddy Django, and her daddy Django. And I seriously, I would love that. If they did that, I'd be like, okay, no, that's great. But I don't really expect that at this time.
I could go for that. Yeah.
Right. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, it would be. That it's almost too cool for Disney.
Yeah, well, that right. That's it. That's the thing, is I can't imagine like that JJ would be that brilliant.
Right.
Yeah. Only passionate fans can come up with that kind of gold. And
right.
and as somebody, look, folks, I'm not making fun of Boba Fett. I love Boba Fett. Like, I mean, I am such a huge fan of that character, and I know why, for very superficial reasons. But I think that'd be phenomenal. So anyway, but well, who knows? Now, admittedly, another picture in this roundup that did excite me was the picture of General Hux and Allegiant General Pride. Of course, Allegiant General Pride is the character we now know that Richard E. Grant is going to be playing. I know a lot of people were very hopeful that he would be playing Grand Admiral Thrawn, which he does have the look. It would have been great. But they're both there. They're on, it looks like on Kylo Ren's Star Destroyer, or on some kind of Star Destroyer of some type. And they're both in triple black. Who the hell knows what Allegiant General means? I have no idea. Just like probably the first time we ever heard Grand Moff. What the fuck is that?
Right.
But they do look cool. They do look badass. And of course, I'm also hopeful that, Domhnall Gleeson is a great actor. I hope that JJ doesn't make him the butt of every joke, and
yeah, it's been he's been such a disappointing character in the last two movies. I mean, it really, like, talk about here again, another underutilized character and underutilized actor too.
Yeah. Because he's powerful. I mean, people can make fun of his Nazi speech, and rightfully so. Can make fun of his Nazi speech in The Force Awakens. But like, he pulled it off. Like, you call it that because he did it so goddamn believably. And even though it was over the top, I mean, that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, I don't know what Allegiant is. I don't know if that's like the Emperor's remaining, like, or that's some kind of separate part of the Empire. I mean, who knows? I don't know. Have you heard any theories? Anybody tossing anything out there that you've heard?
No. I mean, the character obviously looks like he'd be old enough to be around from the Imperial days. I did hear some rumors saying that they think it's General Hux's father, but I seem to recall didn't Hux have his father killed off in one of the books or something?
Yeah, I thought in the trilogy there.
Aftermath?
Yeah, the Aftermath trilogy.
Yeah.
I thought in that was like the end of it.
Right.
Now I can't even remember his dad's name, because some people were saying, oh, maybe his dad has a different name. No, we know his dad's name, and it's not Pride.
Right.
Yeah, so good bet that it's not him. But I mean, he looks great. Richard E. Grant looks fantastic, a tremendous actor. I'm excited to see what he's going to bring. I hope he's not some minor character. In fact, some of the other like First Order generals that we've seen in The Last Jedi, I wanted more of them because they seemed like such great characters and they had such presence and gravitas. I mean, even for, the little bit that they were there. So anyway, hopefully we end up getting more of that. But yeah, we have no idea what Allegiant means. But I guess we'll find out. So anything more on that picture from you, Rob?
No.
Yeah, fair. So a lot of the other pictures are all on this in the desert location on Jordan. There's not a whole lot really to pull from it. Of course, there's the great picture of Lando, Poe, and Chewbacca in the Falcon, which it's just, Billy D. Williams looks incredible, especially for his age. I mean, just totally believable, ready to kick some ass. Then there is the picture with Finn, and what's the other character's name that
Janah?
Naomi Aki's playing there? Is it Janah? Is that how they pronounce it at Celebration?
That's how I'm pronouncing it. I'm not. I don't quote me on that.
Yeah. No, I know. Yeah, that's why I said Naomi Aki, because I can't remember how they pronounced her character's name. But they're both on what appears to be kind of a horseback. Of course, they're not actually, they're Orbaks, I think is the name of them. And that looks interesting, but this picture is where it feels like JJ. Actually, and the fact that there's just another fucking desert planet. Like, JJ Abrams, I wish he could, just bring something in from the original trilogy besides, the original characters. I wish we could go back to some planet, or what would be really great, how about we go to Ithor, or I don't know, something within the canon. You know what I mean? Instead of constantly making new planets. I don't know. There's things I feel like that he could have used where it could have been a lot more, where it could have felt familiar to Star Wars. Instead, this falls into something we've talked about on previous TIE Fighter Renegades, as well as Sovereign Trek, where I feel like JJ just puts stuff in so that he can make money off of the toy sales.
That's why he's trying to put his own brand on it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly that. And that's kind of what's annoying me in a lot of these pictures.
Which is kind of surprising though, because we do see in the trailer the remnants of the Death Star 2. So I mean, at least there's that. There
is that, but we don't even know what planet that's on.
Right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and I've had some interesting discussions with people about that too, and that a lot of people are speculating that that's Endor. But I don't think that necessarily needs to be the case. In fact, there was an old West End Games Star Wars RPG module where basically, they had you were exploring a chunk of the first Death Star that had gotten thrown through hyperspace when it exploded.
Right, because the Death Star has so many hyperspace engines. Like, it has more.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, those chunks of the Death Star could have flown out into space, into anywhere in the galaxy.
Yeah. So, yeah, it could be anywhere. So, it could be on the moon of Endor. It could be Endor itself. I mean, personally, I'd want it to either be Endor or the forest moon of Endor. Again, for the very reasons of just having that connective tissue.
Right.
But well, I guess we won't know until December. Go ahead.
Yeah. I'm not holding my breath on that, just because, like we've been talking about, with JJ wanting to put his mark on the Star Wars universe and do his own thing. So even when he does reference stuff from the original trilogy, he wants to change it just enough that it's still partly his.
Yeah. There is a couple other pictures of note to bring up. One is a beautiful picture of John Williams, in full conductor pose, probably with the London Symphony Orchestra, who he's worked with on all of these films. And there is Carrie Fisher is on the screen in the back. So obviously they're scoring a scene for Carrie Fisher. And certainly, I mean, this picture is one that just pulls at the heartstrings, no pun intended. Because, just seeing John Williams getting the opportunity to do music for Carrie Fisher once again is amazing. And just a beautiful moment to see. That one stood out for me. What did you think of that shot?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably for the last time too, because he's pretty much retiring after this one, isn't he?
I mean, and honestly, I hate to say it, I'm amazed he's still alive. And there have been some close calls over the past couple of years.
Right.
So it's fantastic to see him, up there doing it. And of course, for who he's doing it for, particularly in that picture, is just a triple emotional moment, frankly. So the other picture, very, very poignant. Picture that might out for some is the shot of Mark Hamill and him, R2-D2, standing in front of some kind of burning ground, not in a blue glow whatsoever. And so this is leading a lot of people to speculate how exactly Luke Skywalker is going to appear in Episode 9. My guess is with this picture is just that they just removed the glow filter, the Force Ghost filter on him. But that's really what this is going to end up looking like. I don't know. What are your thoughts on this shot? I mean, that's just my theory.
My first impression is this is going to be the first time we get an actual flash. Well, no, it wouldn't be the first time we get a flashback, because they did that in The Last Jedi. I think this is a flashback to the destruction of the Jedi Temple.
Okay.
The new Jedi Temple, that Luke built.
Right.
Yeah.
The only thing is, didn't we have
Go ahead.
I was going to say, didn't Campbell in that flashback sequence, when the temple's burning? Because in the picture he's got that long flowing hair. I don't know. I'm open to that interpretation. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, for me, all the elements are there. I mean, we know R2 was with him in that scene, because we saw elements of that in Rey's vision in The Force Awakens.
Where he puts
everything's on fire and
right. Yeah, I don't know. Well, in any case, I'm open to any interpretation on this, but it's just great to see Mark Hamill there, of course. Hopefully he won't feel so hornswoggled by the end of this movie. I don't know. Or is that what he said? Did he say he hornswoggled?
Yeah, we talked about that in a previous episode. I mean, I haven't heard anything new from him, so I'm assuming his opinion hasn't changed. But maybe I'm sure we'll hear more as we get closer to the release of the movie, or maybe not. Maybe Disney will come and say, "Hey, just shut up."
Yeah. I can picture it. It's so funny, because Mark Hamill on Twitter, he's very, very, very active, very political,
right?
Frankly, and no one's silencing him about that, which amazes the hell out of me. But boy, I mean, granted, they also haven't really silenced him much about Star Wars either. But I could picture that. We're no, you can say whatever you want politically. We don't care how far, how charged whatever you're saying is. But just stop thinking about Star Wars. Well, I mean, that's such a reverse.
And he's just in such a great position to do that, because I mean, he's even said it before. What are they going to do? Fire me? He's Mark Hamill. You're not going to get anybody to replace him.
I love it. Yeah, it's so great. Oh man, the heart of the tiger there. That's for sure. Well, anyway, so yeah, I mean, there's good things in these pictures. There's other things where it's like, yeah, and I don't know. It doesn't need like a full breakdown like I've seen some people gone over these pictures with. But at the same time, I also appreciate some people that are willing to point a lot of the finer points in these pictures out. Any other thoughts on the Vanity Fair reveals there, Rob?
I'm just looking forward to finally getting my hands on the issue and seeing if there's more photos that we haven't seen on the internet.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's
yeah, absolutely. It. Sure. Yeah. So we might revisit this in next month's TIE Fighter Renegades. We'll see what ends up happening with that. Okay. So, well, anyway, in further movie news, and this is movie news, not TV news. We've been getting plenty of that with Star Wars. But with movie news, of course, we'll save the TV news for another time. But with the movie news is that there is confirmation. I think it was BuzzFeed who came out and basically said that that Leda Kalogridis, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She's another one where I've appreciated her work. I've just never heard her name said out loud. And she's tremendous. She's done work on Alita Battle Angel, which I thought was a fantastic movie, surprisingly fantastic, that came out this year. She also did work on Terminator Genesis, which I actually really enjoyed. I really enjoyed that. But turns out BuzzFeed found out she is penning a Knights of the Old Republic movie. And a lot of people are bringing this up that she is really the first major female Star Wars writer, at least as far as live action goes, since really Leigh Brackett, with Empire Strikes Back. I'm glad that Leigh Brackett's getting the fucking credit, for what she did. But also, I think that this is a great move, and I think that Kalogridis is, or maybe it's Kalogridis. Anyway, she's a great writer. Like, just based on her work, I think she's tremendous. And for her to do Knights of the Old Republic, for there just to be Knights of the Old Republic, is a very, very exciting prospect, in my opinion. We're not sure who's behind this. Is this the Benioff and Weiss trilogy that's coming up? Is this Rian Johnson's work? I'm going to guess it's not Rian Johnson's work, because I think he's going to do something based around that bullshit 15 minutes of Canto Bight that he did in Last Jedi. But I don't know. We'll end up seeing. But how do you feel about this news, Rob?
Yeah, it's I certainly appreciate that they're getting some female talent behind the camera in Star Wars now. We still need a director,
yes,
to do a movie, but hopefully we get the whole story. Hopefully there's no funny business like we had with Rogue One, and where they're constantly chopping and messing with the script, and they don't have to have somebody come in and basically doesn't have any passion for the project and make a mess of it.
Yeah. Am I hoping they've learned from that, because like that news, anytime that's happened with, it happened with Solo, right. It happened with, again, Rogue One famously, and all this. That's only hurt Disney anytime that's happened.
Yeah.
And I think part of the reason that so many people, speaking of TV, that so many people are excited about Mandalorian is because you had the right names, and there is no discussion of reshoots. There is no discussion of anybody coming in and chopping shit up,
right.
Or anything like that. And I think that's why a lot of people are feeling very confident or very excited about The Mandalorian, whether they realize it or not. I think that's why they're excited for it.
Yeah.
So I agree with you that this is something they either need to keep that shit well under wraps. And I think that it'll also be a fail if they end up doing like what happened with Star Trek 4, where we had S.E. Clarkson as the director for that movie, and then the movie ended up falling through. That just puts egg on the face of Paramount so bad.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, this would do the same thing.
Well,
go ahead.
There's trouble, and I agree with you. I don't think Rian Johnson is going to be the one that's going to be heading this project, because early on when that was announced, I think it was either Kathleen Kennedy or Rian Johnson came out and said that what he's working on is something totally new that's never been seen in Star Wars before.
Mm-hmm,
so that would preclude Knights of the Old Republic. But there's there's trouble in paradise in the world of DB Weiss and David Benioff. Like the season 8 of Game of Thrones has not been well received at all. In fact, I understand there's already a petition to have them removed from Star Wars before they get their hands on it.
Which, yeah, again, Star Wars is no stranger to change.org petitions. That's for damn sure.
Right.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Game of Thrones fan. I don't watch. I do my best to like just not get exposed to it. But like, you can't. It's such a cultural force. I'll give it that. You can't help but ignore. People are really displeased at whatever the fuck happened in season 8 of that.
And they've been total dicks
about
it too, because they came out with an article saying, yeah, we're like, they're planning to basically go into seclusion when the final episode of Game of Thrones aired. So I don't know if they've come out yet or not, because I know that's fine. I haven't watched it. I don't know. I haven't watched Game of Thrones in literally years. But I just remember seeing that, that article and the interview with them, and then saying that, they don't want to see the reaction to it. They don't care. They're done with it. They've said their piece. They're moving on. Right. And I'm like, well, what a dick move.
Yeah. I mean, in one sense, like, I kind of can't blame them for wanting to, because they had to know. They had to know, like, that there's going to be people that are going to be pissed off about this, and they didn't want to deal with it, but stand out in front of your work.
Right, exactly.
If I had a bunch of critics, I mean, like George Lucas, or even one of my favorite, I've mentioned this many times, I won't tell the whole story, but basically, there's a time where Gene Roddenberry was getting heckled on stage at a Star Trek convention, people complaining about Wesley Crusher. And he just straight up told them, he says, no, this is for me. I'm doing this. Right. This is mine. He didn't give a shit. He gave it right back to them if they tried to tell him what to do. Right. And yeah, I respect that when the creator gets in in people's faces. And the fact that George Lucas never go ahead.
Yeah, this comes back to what we were talking about in a previous episode, TIE Fighter Renegades, that there's really not, you can't find many creative people in Hollywood these days are willing to take ownership of the things that they're working on.
Yeah.
And that and I think that results in just a real lack of true vision and creativity.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, and I grant you, like, and other podcasts have said this, I've heard this on other shows, where if we had Twitter when any other show, like major cultural phenomenon like The Sopranos or Lost or something like that, if we had Twitter at those points, like, the creators would have been skewered. Like, I mean, there would have been petitions, especially like with Lost. Holy shit, that would have been a shitstorm. And so this is kind of a new thing for people to have to deal with, and I understand that, and I understand it can get very but at the same time, I don't know, like we said, we've seen people at conventions and other places where they completely stand by their work, and it's my this is my tapestry, and you don't have the right to tell me what I'm going to do with it. And yeah, you're right, that's missing. But I can understand that. Yeah, this is kind of a new thing, and I don't think the world, I mean, I've said this on my show Sovereign Tech many times, the world's not ready for the level of technology that we have. Like, we don't know how to handle Twitter. We don't know how to handle social media in general. Right. And so I can respect that, but go ahead.
It just Twitter is like, a prime example of the amount of empathy that's lacking in our society. Yeah.
No, you're totally right. So in one sense, I can understand why they want to go in hiding, but on the other, it's like, come on, guys, stand by your work. Right. So,
because the thing is, and we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, but with episode 1 is experiencing no less than a renaissance right now. And it's being appreciated far more now than it ever has in the past. And the thing is George Lucas has never backed down from his support of that movie and the degree to which he loves it. And people remember that. And people remember that he never backed down. And he never gave up on it. Yeah. And if these guys do this with Star Wars, I'm going to remember. That, they told everybody to go shit themselves, and, that they weren't willing to stand up for their work.
Yeah. Or engage the fans, over their passion.
Right.
Because it feels like a lack of passion on their part. That's the problem.
Yeah.
As to where George never, like you said, he never backed down. He's like, no, this is what I'm doing,
Yeah, and we know that the criticism affected George personally, but I mean, he took that, and he moved on, and he did, 2 more movies.
Yeah, damn right. And he did it his way. So,
right. So I mean, like, major respect. I mean, I simply cannot, understand anybody who says that, George Lucas ruined or destroyed Star Wars. It's just such a ridiculous claim, in my opinion.
I agree,
because he's always been its biggest advocate.
Yeah, no, I agree, totally. So, as far as with the Knights of the Old Republic news, I'm overall excited about this. I mean, it's got the right writer anyway. I can say that, or at least a writer where I feel like she's 3 for 3 of what I know of her. And that's something, because they were big movies and ones that the critics didn't know, maybe not always enjoyed, like Terminator Genesis, but I certainly did. I think it'd be a bad move to even like begin to speculate what the hell this is going to be about. Like, is it going to be about Darth Revan? Is it going to be about Exar Kun? I don't think there's any point even like going there right this second.
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, part of me thinks that they're going to redo that whole timeline, but then again, that wouldn't be necessarily consistent with other things that we've seen. Like, certainly the sequel trilogy was something that was largely new and unexpected, but other things, like in the animated world and whatnot, have taken a lot more and shown more respect and homage to the expanded universe.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I agree with you on that. So, I mean, how you're feeling? I know you're concerned about it being like with Benioff and Weiss. I mean, but overall, you're looking forward to Knights of the Old Republic content, I would say.
I mean, like, I've wanted a Knights of the Old Republic, movie ever since the game came out.
Right.
Shit, yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Same. So this is interesting news. And again, I mean, it's almost insulting in a way, though, to think that there hasn't been a female writer for, I guess you'd say, live action for Star Wars since Empire Strikes Back. That doesn't smack well.
Yeah, I mean, unless you count Carrie Fisher, working on the Force Awakens, and I think she also script doctored The Last Jedi too.
Sure.
So, I mean, granted, but she's uncredited for those. So,
right. Yeah, fair enough. So, well, why don't we go ahead? Let's, unless you got anything else you want to put on this, we can shift gears into our next story.
Let's do it.
Okay. Yeah, actually, our next story is really a review. And speaking of, female writers within Star Wars, not just, but maybe the premier writer in Star Wars overall, that being Claudia Gray, who's best known for Lost Stars, as well as the Alderaan. I mean, she's in Bloodline, If Nest, some of the best Star Wars novels, the canon. I mean, it just really, really impressive stuff. And so last month in April 2019, when Master and Apprentice came out, I think a lot of people were very excited for this because it is Claudia Gray. Otherwise, I don't know if anybody would have even necessarily cared, because it's a prequel book, a prequel to Episode 1, which I think is fitting with the 20th anniversary of Episode 1 being this year to do this sort of thing. Yeah, this is very much a prequel. We're getting a story around Obi-Wan Kenobi as the Padawan to Qui-Gon Jinn. It is very much a Qui-Gon novel, but it's also a novel for some other new characters that Claudia Gray has been instrumental in creating. But Master and Apprentice, let me ask you first, were you excited for this book, knowing what it was about?
I mean, I was excited to get more about Qui-Gon. I'm certainly excited to read more of Claudia Gray's work, because she has been pretty much the premier author in Star Wars novels of the ever since Disney took over. So I was excited on that level. Absolutely.
Sure. Now, this also played in well, interestingly, with a audiobook, and it is an audio play, really, an audio play only, that was available on Audible. It did not come out as a book, even though it could have easily been one. It was just, it'd be written in first person. That being Dooku Jedi Lost, which, like, that got announced on the Star Wars show beginning of April. And then amazingly, like, I mean, it came out, you know, like 20 days or 28 days later or something. I mean, like they announced it and then it was just coming out really fast. So I don't know what the deal is as far as production with that goes. But the Master and Apprentice novel, I guess let's maybe talk about that first, unless you want to talk about Dooku Jedi Lost first, because I listened to it in one order. I listened to Master and Apprentice first, then I Lost. But Rob, if I remember right, you listened to it in the reversed order, where you listened to Dooku Jedi Lost first, and then you listened to Master and Apprentice. Did I get that right?
Yeah, yeah, I did. I guess I was just a little more excited for the audio drama production in Dooku Jedi Lost, and just because we haven't really gotten as much like not only that, and I knew that Ventress was sort of going to be like the narrator story, and she's just like a favorite character of mine.
Yes, same. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, and that did have a full cast, and I thought the cast did a tremendous job.
Oh, it was brilliant.
Yeah, super well done.
I mean, and it really grabs you right from the beginning, where you know, Ventress is going off. She's like, I think at Dooku's castle, and she's like, you know, I hate this place, I hate this planet, I hate this cliff that I'm standing on. You know, it's so perfect.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I was totally impressed with the production overall, even if they made it work for what it was with Dooku Jedi Lost. Now, both of these stories, and it's kind of tough not to talk about one and talk about the other, because they also star, while they all kind of either, like Master and Apprentice would often reference Dooku, because Dooku, of course, was Qui-Gon Jinn's master. But it also has another character in it, which is Rael Avros, who is a new character to these two stories specifically. I think it makes sense to start talking about him. I thought he was a great character. He's a Jedi. He is also a apprentice, or was an apprentice to Dooku. He is friends with Qui-Gon Jinn. He has kind of like that. So in Star Wars, there is a Southern accent, but you find out that's like something that people from Wild Space have. I forget exactly who said that, Rael Avros, whether or not that's why he has it, but he has kind of a Texas accent. I thought it worked, and he's a Jedi that likes to get laid, and I thought that was so fucking cool. I wanted more. I'm like, oh, this is great, like a Jedi that fucks, you know, and just a real breaking the rules kind of character. And you get that in both of these. Well, I'll just call them both books, but you get that in both of these productions. And I really enjoyed that. What did you think of Rael Avros' character in these books?
Yeah, he's cool. I mean, I kind of even the way they described, you know, his manner of dress and his, you know, his mannerisms and what he comes across as, you know, like very much sort of like a Western style character, which I've always appreciated that aspect of Star Wars, and that it wasn't just pure science fiction or, you know, science fantasy, that there was always that kind of like element of, you know, Old West style storytelling.
Sure. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I like that in Star Wars as well, and that was certainly one of the points, one of the major things that George Lucas wanted to bring into Star Wars, and you feel it, you know, throughout the entire Star Wars saga. I would say, especially like in Clone Wars, you get a lot more of that too. Yeah, so Rael Avros, cool character. I mean, well, I guess so. You loved Dooku Jedi Lost. You thought that was really enjoyable.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. What did you think of Master and Apprentice? I mean, especially in comparison to like Claudia Gray's other books.
It's not my favorite book of hers.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's really hard to live up to Lost Stars, because I mean, it's still at like somewhere in the top 5 of all Star Wars novels ever, EU included.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, it's hard to top that. Not to say this was a bad novel. I think for me, this novel kind of reinforced, as much as I love the Star Wars universe, it is not a place you would want to live in.
Tell me more.
I mean, it's interesting because a major theme of this novel, of course, is slavery. And how it's still, you know, very much present in the Star Wars universe, and really how much of, outside of the core worlds, the galaxy sort of subsists on slave labor, and
Yes.
the way that, there's that, certainly the divide between, the people who are sort of insulated from that aspect of the galaxy, in the more political core worlds and Coruscant and all that, and the way that the mid and outer rim basically, have to still, linger with this barbaric practice. And I very much appreciated with, the attitude that Qui-Gon gives him, that he finds, the practice abhorrent. And I even go a step farther. I think if I was in the Star Wars universe, I probably would have gone Dark Jedi long ago and just tried to wipe out all the slavers.
Yeah. Oh, there's a lot. Yeah, I agree with you. In fact, I was amazed by my assessment is the same, is that this is not one of Claudia Gray's best books, but it was way better than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody that's a fan of episode 1, and like I want more story around what happens in episode 1, and you get plenty of that. Like there's a lot of events that happen that explain the characters that you see in episode 1 of Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan and so on. But like Qui-Gon, there's a lot of questioning of what the Jedi do in this book. There's the questioning of how, the Jedi even bring in new initiates, right? Because Rael, the character of Rael, is brought in very late. Like there's a lot of conversation around that,
Right.
Which also explains why Qui-Gon was so willing to train Anakin, right, in episode 1. Yeah, and there is a question like, wait, are we kidnapping kids? Which a lot of people have leveled, a lot of Star Wars fans have leveled against the Jedi. Like, these guys, they just take kids away, from their homes if they're Force users. And there was some questioning of that, and this questioning of really what I think, I agree with you that like the Star Wars universe or the Star Wars galaxy is a shitty place. And you really get where Qui-Gon's like, why, we're the Jedi. Why aren't we doing something about this?
Right.
And it's like, it does make you wonder, what exactly are the Jedi protecting? Like what are they even doing? And it in some ways it feels like they're doing fucking nothing.
Right.
And
or if not, they're propping up a transparently corrupt government, which is, like really kind of the point of the prequel trilogy in a lot of ways.
Yes.
And say what you will about the Jedi Order, but I mean, it's not like they didn't have it coming to a certain degree.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you also get a lot of backstory on Dooku in both of these productions. Again, they don't really run concurrent, but they feel concurrent.
Yeah. In some ways, they almost. It was interesting listening to both of these back to back, because there was one part in particular where like I felt like things didn't quite sync up just right, because they, like in the Duke to Jedi Lost, you kind of have Dooku providing Ventress with like these journals or logs from his past.
Right.
And you get, and in the Master Apprentice, you obviously have flashbacks of, back when Qui-Gon was Dooku's apprentice. And you get some of that in the Jedi Lost logs as well that Dooku gives Ventress. And there was a scene in particular, I can't remember, I think it was in Master and Apprentice, where like they're having lightsaber duels when they're younglings, and they haven't been chosen to be Padawans of whatever Jedi Master. And like in that scene, like Qui-Gon comes across as like very sure of himself and confident. Right. And then you go to Dooku Jedi Lost, and there's like a scene that happens like directly after Dooku chooses Qui-Gon as Padawan, and he seems very insecure and very uncertain about his his place with Dooku. And so to me, that didn't quite sync up quite right.
Sure.
And I don't know if you would really catch on to that if you hadn't listened to both of these back to back.
Yeah. No, that I agree that. Yeah, because I did the same, where I very much listened to them back to back. Yeah, I hear you on that. That is interesting. Again, this Dooku Jedi Lost, I kind of feel like that got. I mean, it couldn't have been rushed because it's a full cast production, but it was just weird how quickly it was announced and how quickly it came out after it was announced.
Yeah,
So,
I have a feeling that more than likely, both of these two projects were probably in production at the same
mhm.
time because like you said, even the audio job productions, they take a while
Yeah,
to put together and to cast and to record and all this stuff. And I'm sure they're in the process of editing as they record, just like you would in any movie or whatnot.
right.
So I have a feel I'm not slighting, Lucasfilm Books or the audio division. I don't know if there's a name for that department. I just think it's just like an area where like these two were overlapping in their content,
Mhm.
and they weren't really aware of what the other was working on
Yeah, it didn't exactly match up. Yeah.
because they were in production at the same time.
Right, right. No, that's fair. That's fair. Um, Now, one of the things also, I mean, as far as like things that I liked within these, of course, we mentioned the character of Rail. There wasn't that I get that negative point. There weren't a whole lot of negative points, but I felt like there was a deluge of information, big galaxy spanning information given in these two productions, including actually one of the things we didn't bring up is we get a lot of Sifo-Dyas in Dooku Jedi Lost.
Yeah,
Which was very, very interesting to get that.
it was. It was. In fact, that was a huge surprise the way they represented the character in there. It was almost disturbing.
Yeah, because he's basically a madman.
Yeah,
Like a prophetic man. He's like a Nostradamus
right.
uh, in Star Wars, and it makes you like now you kind of want to know like what how did he end up ordering the clones? How did that happen? I mean, the funny thing that you get so you find out that Dooku in these books is like he's been researching Jedi prophecies, which you find out Jedi prophecies, even the Jedi themselves don't really take them that seriously because it's like they think it's kind of crazy to look to the future in that way.
Right.
You also find out that because Dooku's really into it, his Padawans, that being Qui-Gon and Rael, were also very much into them. And you finally
Yeah.
this is so great, you finally get the fucking prophecy of the Chosen One. Like you get the text in Master and Apprentice, which I thought was, okay, finally we know what the hell that said. Even though I don't know that it necessarily like enlightens anyone in any way. But at least we finally know what the hell that was. And I guess to conclude with all this, there's a part of me that wonders if Sifo-Dyas and Dooku, if they thought they were really being the good guys in bringing some of this prophecy to pass. And I, because there's that funny conversation that Dooku has with Obi-Wan in episode 2, where he's saying, I don't think you know your master that well. Qui-Gon would have joined me. And I guess, I mean, because you encounter Dooku really dealing with a lot of injustices and everything, and he gets really pissed off about it. And he recognizes the Jedi are kind of, their hands are tied from dealing with injustice. I don't know. Like, I feel like I have a bit of sympathy for the devil with Dooku in this. If it weren't for that Age of Republic comic we were talking about, where he does seem to be just like such a like bad guy and deceptive guy, I would be reconsidering Dooku's character, after reading these two books, especially, but or these two productions. I mean, what do you think on that, Rob?
Yeah, I actually agree with you 100%. I mean, like, and because of that scene you referenced in Attack of the Clones, I mean, he comes across as very sincere when he's talking to Obi-Wan, and like,
Yeah,
most people's reaction, I'm sure, is that he was just, he was trying to deceive Obi-Wan
right.
and whatnot. But no, I'd like there's definitely to me a hint of sincerity in what he's saying. And like with the example of like what you were talking about with the prophecies and the way the Jedi's disregard. I mean, it goes even a step further that they outright see them as a possible path to the dark side, just because having foreknowledge of the future, gives you perhaps a sense of control or domination over
Right.
what's going to happen, and certainly that can be. I certainly think that's kind of what they were trying to play into with Dooku and how he, came to the dark side.
Yeah. I mean, and speaking of dark side, that was another interesting thing, and this happens like within the first chapter or so of Master and Apprentice, where and it gets reiterated in Dooku Jedi Lost, that at one point the Sith had like half the galaxy conquered, or like 3/4 of it. A massive swath of the galaxy was under control of the Sith. I kind of wonder if that ability for them to do that came from these like these prophecies. I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot there. They explore more of the Lost 20, or at the time of Dooku Jedi Lost, the Lost 19. Who are these Jedi that left? Why did they leave? What happened? I mean, you get reference to Dark Jedi in that.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of history laid out in these books. For that reason alone, I think they're worthwhile reading.
Yeah. I mean, like I recommend both of these. I mean, especially the I really enjoyed the presentation in the Master Apprentice audiobook. I haven't always enjoyed all of the Star Wars audiobooks. I'm not huge on some of the voice actors that they choose, but this one was really good.
Yeah, and I think you'll end up seeing the prequels in a very, very new light, and in a better one, a much better one. Yeah, I mean, that scene in episode 2 where Dooku's talking to Obi-Wan, I mean, he's being honest with him. He says, no, there's a Dark Lord of the Sith in charge of the fucking Republic. Like, I mean, he just says it straight.
Right.
And I feel like, so the rest of the time he was being completely honest too. But anyway, great books. I mean, not, again, for Claudia Gray, not her best, but we're still talking about Claudia Gray here. So I still think it was a phenomenal read. And I really enjoyed them. Would you have any other comments or anything else you want to bring up from these two productions?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I mean, just solid stuff. And I was surprised. I really wasn't expecting much out of it, but it ended up being something. So, all right, let's get into our last quick news story. We'll make it quick. But on May 23rd, there was a hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen Day. And I, representing TIE Fighter Renegades, said, what the hell? Like, let's I don't think this is going to do any good, but what the fuck? And I retweeted about, hashtag Make Solo 2, of course, the movie being another Solo movie, make it happen. Because, I mean, I actually want to ask you about this, Rob. I mean, I'll say this, like, I could probably count on one hand how many times I've watched Solo. I'm just not, it's just not something I'm going to watch much. I mean, how about you?
I tried to rewatch it recently before going to bed one night, and I couldn't even finish it.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I just
Yep.
Something about it just doesn't click.
It's not a terrible movie. I'm not saying it's a terrible movie. It's just not that great.
Yeah, I don't know. I really want to, like, because I don't want to think about anything Star Wars in that way, but I'm just not rewatching it. Right. It's where I've rewatched Force Awakens and Rogue One. I've watched those countless times already.
Yep.
Over and over again. So it's just weird. But anyway, so there's people who are like, yeah, okay, let's make Solo 2 happen. So I tweet this out, and then Rob's like, you sure this is grassroots?
Yeah.
And you with your critical eye. I'm so glad to be surrounded by people with critical eyes, because sometimes I don't have them. But
one could say I had a bit of a hot take on this.
well, you shared a YouTube video with me from Star Wars Celebration that I didn't even catch this.
Yeah, and I had meant to bring this up when we talked about, Celebration, and it was just sort of like a minor point that I wanted to bring up, and like, we end up talking about so many things during these episodes that it went by, and it wasn't a huge deal. But like, I almost kind of sad that I didn't bring it up, because it was my choice to be, a prophet on Sovryn,
Right. Yeah, I'm usually doing the prophetic stuff, but
right, exactly. Yeah. And I missed my vote.
Right. Which I guess that makes me a dark side. That makes me a Sith now if I'm into prophecy, but no. That's fine.
Come on.
Yeah,
You've always been dark side.
You're totally right. Look, folks, the back of my Jeep has an Imperial symbol, like right on the hitch. You can't miss it. Right? So Anyway, but yeah, you brought up this YouTube video, and it's an interview with Erin Kellerman, who played she played Enfys Nest in Solo, and she makes this one quick comment that I missed, a lot of people missed, you didn't miss. Break it down for me.
Yeah, so she's being interviewed by Annie Gutierrez from the Star Wars show at Celebration,
Right.
and she starts asking her, these questions about the production and how she prepared for the character, and like really quickly she just throws out this thing, I think it was in regards to like keeping the secret of the movie from like her friends and family, and she was like, this was the first movie in a series. And
yes.
I was like, when that happened, like I was and I watched it the day it came out, and I was like, whoa, what is she talking about here? Like, there's all these quote Star Wars stories movies are supposed to be one shots, and here
right.
she is talking about her character in the greater context of the Star Wars universe, and seeming to say that we haven't seen the last of her, and this is the first movie in a series. Because the other thing that I picked up on that interview too is she was talking about the preparation she was given for playing the character, and she talked about how the directors, so this means the original directors of Solo kind of wrote a whole backstory for her character.
Right. Yeah, which, I mean, you get the sense, I mean, this is someone who is starting the rebellion, right, with Enfys Nest. So
right.
There's plenty of backstory, to run with, I think, certainly. So, yeah. So when you brought this up, it's like, wait a minute. So where I caught it from was like makingstarwars.net or whatever, one of those larger Star Wars news sites. And anyone that's been a Star Wars fan for a while, where there have been times in the past, even pre-Disney, where there have been a very tight relationship with the production teams behind Star Wars and some of these news sites. So for example, theforce.net was basically, right. I mean, they were basically henchmen for Rick McCallum, and so, it does make you wonder. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got my AstroTurf senses tingled the first time I saw a tweet, because it's showing these people, and they had like Make Solo 2 Happen t-shirts that were like looking very professionally made up, and they're all wearing them and stuff like that. And I'm like, this didn't just happen on a whim. This was planned out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. And so, I mean, I still, that aside, I have, I'll take all the Star Wars I can get. I don't like, if they want to make Solo 2, fine. And will I go see it in theaters? Yes. And I don't care. Go right ahead. But that, I mean, really the winner to take away from here, and I want to hear your response to that too, but the winner to take away from here is that, based on her, on what was it, on Kellerman's interpretation, these movies are still getting made at some point, right. And hell, maybe they're going to be Disney Plus movies. Who knows? But I mean, how about you? What do you say to Solo 2?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it existing. I would say it's not something I'm really all that excited about, given the first movie. But her character, Enfys Nest, was one of the few highlights of the movie that I thought is worthy of developing further. So absolutely, if they decide to put a greater focus on that, I think that would be great. But at the same time, my big takeaway from this is that this isn't grassroots. This is the Disney marketing machine doing its thing.
Yeah, and it's important to bring up too. I mean, I feel like if you did Solo 2, but if you just put it on Disney Plus instead of in theaters, I think it would go over much better. Because people wouldn't be expecting perhaps the grandeur or whatever it is, whatever the magic is that they didn't get in Solo: A Star Wars Story. They'd be like, okay, your expectations lessen a little bit when it gets to TV, even in our Game of Thrones era. Okay, expectations are still less.
Well, just in the dollar value proposition, you pay less per month for a Disney Plus subscription than you do to just one movie theater ticket.
Yeah, no, well, that's a great point too. There's right, the financial incentive even is significantly less. That's a very, very solid point to bring up. So, and also, I mean, now Emilia Clarke is free, right? Game of Thrones is over, so
Right.
if they wanted to do more with her character, I think there's something to to go with there. Which
Yeah.
I liked her character. I thought that was fine and dandy. One of the better parts of the movie.
Right. Yeah. I was going to, Emphas Nest and her character, and just the way they ended that movie. It seems hard to believe that, it was very much seemed like a setup for some sort of continuation.
Yeah.
Like bringing Darth Maul in the end like that. That just doesn't seem like something you throw in casually as a throwaway thing to surprise people in. That seems like a setup to me.
Yeah, and again, they did do a lot with this character of Kira, and there are even extraneous novels and all this that I think, there's more to do. I really feel like there's more to do. So I'm fine with it if they want to go forward with it. I think that they have winning ways to make it palatable to audiences, and even to where they could almost forget about Solo One. How they can even rename it. You don't have to call it Solo
I was
2.
just going to say they could just get rid of the Solo aspect altogether and continue the stories of Emphas Nest and Kira and Darth Maul and all these other side characters. Hell, I'd love a Lando series. God, that would be great.
Oh man! Oh, bring it! Yeah. Bring Donald on. I mean, like,
yeah. Give him his own show. Do it.
Yeah, he would tear that apart. It'd be amazing. I'm totally on board with that. I'm glad they picked such a young actor for that action.
Yeah, don't make Solo 2. Make Lando 1.
Yeah, there it is. There's the hashtag. Well, maybe if I think of it, I'll put that when I share this episode. So yeah, that'd be perfect. Yeah. So, all right. Well, there we go. I mean, that's the thoughts on Solo 2 and perhaps look, honestly, there was another hashtag. It was like hashtag 3 fave Star Wars characters or something like that. I think it's anytime those hashtags catch on, honestly, I think they're always AstroTurf.
Oh yeah.
Meaning that they're not grassroots. I always think that it's just some kind of marketing. I can't believe you need to market Star Wars, but I'm sure somebody thinks they have to do something worthwhile. I don't know. But that's my opinion, but whatever. I'll play into it here and there. So just remember the old Thufir Hawat quote. Of course, the first step in avoiding a trap is in knowing of its existence.
Right.
So as long as you know it's a trap, it's okay.
It's a trap.
And, it's a right. Woo, there's some 5 degrees or whatever, 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I don't know. I meant no pun with that, but it was perfect. Of course, we all know really what Akbar said was it's a tarp, not a trap. But anyway. That'd be awesome. Yeah. I want to see a giant tarp in episode 9 over the Death Star 2 that's like destroyed. It's like, see, he was right. It's a tarp. All right. No. Yeah, we have too much fun with this show. So something fun. We'll go beyond that, but something fun that we were going to talk about. We're actually going to bump it to next month because we have so much more to get into this episode. The Haynes TIE Fighter Guide. This did come out. I got my hands on it. I know you're getting your hands on it, Rob. And we will be reviewing that next month. Originally, we planned for it for this month, but we'll just push that to next month. There's so much to talk about. Anyway, but I can say I'll just say this much for right now. Go out and buy it. It's worth buying. Okay, so let's get into our fan production of the month. And that is, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say about this, Rob. But that is the Obi-Wan and Vader A New Hope fight scene fan remake. Say that 3 times fast. This was done by Fix It in Post, which I guess is a somewhat popular YouTube channel that does this sort of thing here and there. And basically, they're calling this Star Wars SC-38 reimagined. Of course, SC-38 is a reference to Scene 38 reimagined. And this is the end fight where Obi-Wan dies. Spoiler alert, folks. It's only been 40 years. But this is the scene where Obi-Wan dies after the battle with Darth Vader. And This is something that gets critiqued a lot. I have seen a lot of edits of A New Hope of episode 4, where, like they speed it up to just make it look like it's going faster and to make it look more like the lightsaber sequences that we see in the prequel trilogy, or to see Obi-Wan perhaps more in action, because otherwise a lot of people feel that this last fight scene is quote unquote boring. So this is a full-on remake of that. They even would digitally like put in Sir Alec Guinness's face over whoever their actor was. And so this isn't just speeding up the sequence at the end of A New Hope. This is literally refilming it using some CGI and a lot of other things. And you can watch it for yourself. It's not terribly long. It's about 6 minutes. And Rob, what did you think of this remake of the fight scene between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader?
I mean, it was a decent effort, but I'm quite honestly shocked to the degree which people are shitting themselves over this.
Yeah, this was wildly popular. Like, I mean, people are going nuts over this.
Right, right.
Yeah,
and like like my reaction to that is if George Lucas had done this in the special editions, people would be furious. People would be fucking furious.
Yeah.
So yeah, and literally, like, I have very good friends who have those kind of feelings about the special edition edits, and they're posting this online saying, "Oh, this is so fucking great. This is beautiful, blah blah blah." And I'm like going, "Hey, wait a minute. You got a kind of a double standard here. If you can appreciate this, then you have to be okay with everything George stuck in the special editions, including Jabba the Hutt."
Right. Yeah. No, I hear that double standard, and I mean, what made it meh for you? I mean, we know it's a fan make, so like you don't want to go too crazy on the effects, but overall, what made it?
Yeah, for some of the, I mean, like, there's obviously a lot of scenes that have, like they're it's kind of a mixture of CGI and live photography, and like I have a bias, I'm have a more critical eye for this sort of stuff at one point. And I'll even get into this in a future discussion. But at one point, I was going to get into the realm of visual effects in movies, specifically computer animation. And so, like, this stuff has always been easier for me to spot. Even back in the day when we had movies like Gladiator, where like the entire arena was computer generated, and people said they couldn't.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell, and that it was computer generated. I remember that being one of the first movies where people said, this is the age of CGI, because we can no longer tell the difference between, live photography and practical effects and CGI. And I personally, I could pick it out very easily.
Sure.
This stuff just stands out to me like a sore thumb. So I have a more critical eye when it comes to this stuff. It's really, really hard to impress me.
Right. Yeah. So, well, I can hear that. I mean, some of the like ideas that they had, I thought were kind of cool, like Vader being on fire and hacking and slashing and everything. And overall, like, I really get the concept. I do agree. I do now. Okay. So I actually appreciate everything that George did with the special editions. I mean, there's stuff that like, I can say, okay, he didn't need to do that. But ultimately, I don't care. I think it's fine.
Right.
I even liked, and I know this is here's an unpopular opinion. I even liked the no that he added into the Blu-ray edition at the end of Return of the Jedi when Vader is killing Palpatine. And I mean, a lot of people complain about that. I thought it was fine and worked. And with that said, like, I do understand. I'm also the person that thinks A New Hope is like the one movie that could get remade. Because it does feel, and I know why it feels that way, because there's nothing ever made like it before. So that, they're trailblazing all over the place. Okay. Right. And figuring shit out as they went along. I completely understand that. But I mean, to me, it's my least, well, maybe next to Solo, it's my least favorite Star Wars movie. And I just, I mean, I almost go so far as to say the movie's like kind of boring. So I'm a person who wouldn't mind a remake, of that film. And I've even like said, yeah, go ahead and do it. What the hell? And it gets a stronger feeling of that, especially when you see how Vader acts at the end of Rogue One, right? That epic scene in the hallway, where you really want that. And this kind of delivers on that version of Vader. I'll give it that. But also, I mean, I thought it's good, and I appreciate the effort, but I'm kind of with you where it's like, yeah, but it might even be too much. It might even be too overboard.
Yeah, it is. In my opinion, it's a bit much. And like this is one area where like Brian and I disagree on Star Wars. I actually love A New Hope. I think if A New Hope wasn't a great movie, we wouldn't be talking about Star Wars right now.
I hear you. The thing is, there's a difference between being So in business, there's this old saying: you can be first or best. I think it was first. It's far from best, but that's the thing, is that it was first, and so that's what gives it its gravitas.
I disagree, and see, I almost view A New Hope. I know it's not a period piece, but I almost look at it in those terms. It is very much a product of the late 70s, post-Vietnam War America.
Okay.
It's a project, and like A New Hope, that movie could never have been made other than in that time period.
No, yeah, I agree with you on that. I totally, and I respect it for that. Yeah, go ahead.
And so in its place, at its time in history, it is first and best. At its time. In that context of 1977, when it was, I challenge you to go back to 1977 and give me a better movie.
Well, all right. I mean, I think Logan's Run is a better movie. But and that gets brought up a lot, actually, as like being the oddball of where Star Wars was like the first, however people want to classify it. A lot of people classify it as a sci-fi movie. That was like the first like really good looking and well done sci-fi movie for a lot of people. But those same people, which I've also said for years independently, will say Logan's Run was the oddity in all that. I have a question I'm going to ask you, or I have a point I'm going to bring up. I want to just like close out one point on this fan reimagining, and then I want to talk. We're going to expand a little bit on this conversation, because you brought something to mind for me that I actually mentioned in a Sovryn Tech, which hasn't come out yet as of this recording, but regardless, bring up. We see old Obi-Wan in Rebels, and he is a far more careful, considerate, and slower fighter in that fight scene. I mean, in fact, it's barely a fight scene, and so I think that the end scene, like, I get the arguments against it in A New Hope. I think the end scene matches with more of Star Wars than less of it is my point. That with Obi-Wan, so I feel like it, and that's the overall point of that. Now, that said, okay. Here's I heard on another Star Wars podcast, someone make the comment. He says, there's a reason we're talking about Star Wars and we're not talking about Flash Gordon. And he was specifically referencing A New Hope in comparison to the 1980 Flash Gordon movie. I think the 1980 Flash Gordon movie is an infinitely better movie than A New Hope. It's not first. It wasn't before. It wouldn't have gotten made if it wasn't for A New Hope. And yes, I mean, yeah, George Lucas really wanted to make a Flash Gordon movie. That's what Star Wars kind of started out as, right? But I get it. I get it that there wouldn't be a Flash Gordon 1980 without A New Hope. But I really think that argument that there's a reason we're talking about A New Hope, or that we're talking about Star Wars and we're not talking about Flash Gordon, I don't know what exactly happened around that, but that's not a good argument, because I think Flash.
I agree that it's a terrible argument, because it's an apples and oranges comparison, in my opinion.
Okay.
Not only that, I mean, yes, you can say that Flash Gordon wouldn't have happened without Star Wars, but then again, Star Wars wouldn't have happened without the Flash Gordon serials.
Right, from the 30s.
Right.
Yeah, with Buster Crabbe. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Here again, I still think the two of those are an apples and oranges comparison. They're almost different genres. Almost.
Yeah, almost. I don't know. Well, I mean, I think I know your answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Which do you think is the better movie? A New Hope, it's standing alone, A New Hope standing alone, or Flash Gordon 1980?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with New Hope.
Wow.
Just for I mean I can rewatch New Hope in any edition over and over and over again. I'll watch Flash Gordon, maybe once every 5-6 years, if that.
Oh man. Oh.
Sorry, man. I mean, I got to be honest. But here again, like I'm saying, it's not a fair comparison because to me, they're not even in really the same genre. Flash Gordon is definitely more, kitsch and camp. And I know that's your thing. And I agree that there's, a time and a place for that. Star Wars is not in that genre.
Oh man. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I hear you. Obviously, I respect your opinion, and I know it comes from a very intelligent place, like a hyper intelligent place. It's, yeah. I think A New Hope only has gravitas because it did all of it first, and it's not like there weren't other people thinking about it. Like I remember there was an interview with James Cameron where he's talking about Star Wars, and he says, like when he first saw A New Hope, he says, "Oh, God damn it, somebody got there first," of creating this dirty universe and this lived-in universe, and very believable at that. And I feel like that's kind of it. It's just that it was first. I mean, I'm glad it was because we get Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, and then we get video games and all that, which are what really makes Star Wars great, in my opinion. Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. I'm going to present an argument that
okay,
maybe like I'm tailoring this to your perspective, definitely. So maybe you'll see it. One of the things that makes A New Hope superior is that you see the bad guys win. Emperor Ming just tries to destroy the planet Earth, but he never pulls it off. Whereas Empire destroyed a whole planet.
Yeah, but Ming survives. Like you get the guy grabbing the ring at the end.
Darth Vader survives.
Yeah.
I mean, like you really I really feel like Star Wars upped the stakes. You see, like you have to take this serious. They destroyed a whole planet full of millions, if not billions, of people, whereas Emperor Ming only has aspirations to do such things.
Yeah, I like the bad guys, and I agree. So, well, all right, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, I'll tell you, like, the one thing I wish would happen in Flash Gordon 1980 is I wish Flash actually took Ming's offer and just became the Emperor or became the King of Earth. Like, I really wish that fucking happened.
But you say that about Return of the Jedi too.
Well, sure. But here's the thing with A New Hope: they blew up the wrong planet. Like, Alderaan is. What little we know of it is the cool, in my opinion. I mean, it's been my banner on my Twitter account for years because like it so embodies so much of my actual life philosophy, not my fantasies. And they blew it up and we get nothing more of it. And so like I'm actually kind of pissed off about that. But I hear you. You're right. It is the bad guys winning in a very real way. Yeah, I mean, I get your point. I still think. I think Flash Gordon 1980 is just an infinitely better film, but we're going to have to agree to disagree on that one.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, and it's not that I don't respect your opinion. I mean, like, and here again, like I appreciate what you said about it, and I understand that you're coming from an equally intelligent and reasoned position, and I'm not saying you're wrong. It's just that we disagree.
Yeah. But we do agree that this Scene 38 reimagined fight sequence is, I don't get the excitement around it. I mean, it's good. Yeah. It is what it is, but not like, oh my God, this is the most amazing fucking thing we've ever seen. I don't grasp it.
I think if they had spent some more time on it and put a little more polish into it and make some of the compositing a little more polished and between the backgrounds and the character and make it look a little more seamless, I probably would have been more impressed. But the state it's in right now, and especially like the scenes with Obi-Wan where they obviously just pasted the footage of Alec Guinness's face over the actor playing Obi-Wan. Some of that just looks terrible.
Yeah. I mean, the effects, I'm not going to, I mean, I hear that. As long as what they're doing is good or is believable enough, I can look past the effects personally. But again, it just felt like too much. I did like the hearing of the voices from episode 3, the lines.
Yeah, that was cool.
I thought that was a nice touch.
If they did another re-release, if they did another re-release of Star Wars and decided to make some more edits and they put in some shades of that from the prequel trilogy, I would be for that. That'd be totally cool.
Yeah, and we have precedent for that now with episode 7. I mean, that we do get those kind of flashback sequences, right, and episode 8 as well. So I would be fine with that. I'd say go ahead, add them in. But anyway, so there's that. If people want to check it out, link is in the show notes for this episode. It's certainly worth watching. I can say that much. But I agree with you, Rob. I don't get all the hoopla around it. So okay, let's. Well, how about we get into our question of the month? And this has to do with really. Well, I mean, it's May. It's May 2019, and this is the month when finally Episode 1 in 1999 dropped. And maybe a lot of Star Wars fans dropped that same day. I don't know. At the time, well, I mean, I'll ask the question. Basically, I'll ask you, Rob, what was your experience going into Episode 1? Maybe from the moment that trailer, which was the first time that an internet trailer really mattered. Now it's par for the course. But really, this was like the first major internet trailer, as far as I can remember, that everybody really went nuts over. From the time of the trailer to the time of release, what was that experience like for you? What was the experience after you saw it for the first or second time? And I guess, how do you feel about the aftermath? I mean, there's a lot to talk about here. But I think we got to talk about it because, I mean, and like you said earlier, this is a movie where I think the opinions about it have changed dramatically since 1999, because overall, I think the general gist, we'll talk about ours, but the general gist was negative. The general feeling, the abstract around it was very, very negative at the time, which was a surprise, I think, for anybody on the planet. So going into it, you see the trailer. Let me ask you that. You see the trailer. How are you feeling about Episode 1 in 1999?
Well, I'm even going to start, like when you sent me this question, in preparation for the show, I really had to go back and re-examine, realize that, Episode 1 was, a part of and a cause of some rather significant changes in my life. So when I was, when the trailer first came out, I was actually working in the movie theater. So I didn't actually see it on the internet for the first time. I saw it in the movie theaters. In fact, I put the 35 millimeter film trailer on the projector in front of movies. So, and to this day, I actually still have the 35 millimeter film trailer in storage, like the actual film trailer that I got from the movie theater.
Okay.
And I was like for years and years, this we were at the height of excitement with the expanded universe, and then we finally got the news they were going to get more movies. And I gotta say, they like with the trailer, they hit it out of the park. Like,
yes, sure.
It was, and in some ways, I mean, and of course, this has certainly become a thing with just movies, and especially Star Wars movies generally. I almost feel like, the trailer presented a different movie than what we got.
Yeah, I mean, well, let me comment. I just want to say quickly on that. The main thing I remember from the trailer is the pod race sequence, and where it's just first person and bammo, you're going. And that created an air of excitement. And in that sense, I can see what you're saying, where it didn't feel like we got that movie, because even I'll say Episode 1, I mean, I think I love the movie, but it's also, like, I can admit where it's not exciting,
Right. Yeah. But I mean, like,
fast paced anyway.
Yeah. But the trailer was very exciting, because I mean, I seemed to tell we got stuff from the Battle of Naboo, the space battle, and and just the way the trailer starts. I mean, you got to understand, like, this is the first time that we had heard John Williams Star Wars music in an official capacity in a very
Mhm.
long time. And so immediately it starts, kind of tugging at your heartstrings, and like it definitely, like, they're playing on your nostalgia.
Yeah, this was probably the only classical music that MTV ever played a music video for in history, because when Duel of the Fates came out, I mean, it was all over the place, and MTV had like a huge reveal, the music video for it and everything. And not that that's exactly, I mean, there's still choral elements to it, but you get my point. Anyway, continue.
But yeah, and oddly enough, this thing turned out, like, I wasn't for that job very much longer. I'd been there for a few years, and I'd gotten to the position of assistant manager at the theater, and they had recently transferred in a new manager, and this guy was a total dick, and it got to the point where, like, he was yelling at other people, other employees, and breaking them down. They were breaking down in tears, and I just came up to him. I said, "You can't fucking treat people like that."
Mm-hmm.
And so, sort of like, "You're quit. I quit. You're fired," sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the nice little post note to that is that I kind of had endeared myself to all the employees that were there for standing up to him like that. And Lucasfilm was doing something new at the time where, like, all the marketing material for the Star Wars movies for Episode 1, after the movie was over, was supposed to go back to Lucasfilm. Otherwise, you would not get posters and marketing material for the following movies. That was sort of like, it wasn't even just an implied threat. They just plain out said it. If you don't send this material back to us, you're not going to get marketing material for the next movie, which I don't think they actually, lived up to that threat,
Right.
because the employees had basically secreted it off. Episode 1 posters, banners, the trailer to me when I came back to visit them later on after I, quit / been fired, which is really cool.
Especially at the time, how could they even keep track of that? I mean, this is common practice. Honestly,
oh no,
today.
No, they knew it was gone. Like, I made off with, like, like that big 10-foot banner with Anakin Skywalker's shadow of Darth Vader being cast on the building there. I mean, it's just this huge banner,
right.
And like, you couldn't notice it disappearing, and I still have it to this very day. And like, and then the same thing with the film trailer. I mean, you're supposed to send all that stuff back.
Nope. Yeah, that's fantastic. No, I love it. I love it. Yeah. I mean, I'll speak to the trailer quickly. Just that, oh man, did it excite the fuck out of me. And I can, like, literally remember the quick time. I had my iMac at the time, and like, over and over again, couldn't stop watching that trailer. It was so fucking exciting. So we're getting to the buildup, before this movie actually comes out at the end of May of 1999. I mean, how are you feeling about this? There's a lot. I mean, the marketing machine was fucking insane. I mean, there's Darth Maul everywhere, anywhere you went. I mean, they might as well, at Walmart, they might as well have painted it red, instead of blue, because I mean, there's just so much Darth Maul. Go ahead.
I was whole hog in. In fact, after I left that job, that's when I decided to actually go back to school and pursue a degree in computer animation. And it was all because I wanted to go work for Lucasfilm and be involved in visual effects. In fact, I even chose to pick a school close to Marin County up in San Francisco to go do this. And I paid a not insignificant amount of money to buy a crew jacket from Episode 1 movie, and I still have that too.
Oh, these days, man. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so yeah, I mean, so you're a whole hog in. You're we're gonna do this. Were you one of the people? Were you camping out? I mean, were you?
Yes. Oh yeah.
One of those?
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, this is the cool thing is the theater I was camping out at was the Coronet in San Francisco, which is literally the theater that George Lucas goes to see his movies. And the day I was there camping out was when they were doing the Lucasfilm employee screening of Episode 1. and I didn't get to meet George Lucas, but I saw him, and I
Right.
got, later on my opinions would change of this man, but at the time I did actually get to meet with and talk with Rick McCallum.
Right. Well, at the time, I mean, Rick McCallum was, he was one of the good guys.
Right.
I certainly understand that. Because he had actually worked with some of the, with special editions, I think, involved with that process.
Yeah.
And, he was doing good. So, yeah, anyway, I'll continue.
So, yeah, it was an amazing experience all around. I mean, I have like actually more fond memories of the leading up to episode 1 than, the post.
Yeah, I think a lot of Star Wars fans are that way. I mean, how many days did you camp out? Did you say?
I camped out for the way they did it. It was kind of like in shifts, so I only had to camp out for 24 hours for one day.
Oh, okay.
And then basically
nice.
my spot in line was saved.
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I mean, I know there were people who were camped out for like 3 months or something.
Oh,
crazy.
no, and I was like pretty far back in line, because I did it that way. There were people there at that theater who were camped out for weeks. It was crazy.
That's amazing. I mean, I loved hearing those.
And I couldn't do that because I was literally going to school at the time trying to become, a visual effects artist.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I heard those stories. I mean, at the time I was in Utica, New York. Okay. So not like a hotbed of any kind of culture, except for maybe Italian, which when you're a Jewish boy, well, anyway, but there wasn't any of that there, like that kind of excitement. So I loved reading the stories online that people were doing that or hearing it on the news. I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. There's Star Wars fans that get it. They're that, they're that excited for it and everything. So I still, to this day, I think that's so cool.
And the premiere night the premiere night was just totally wild. I mean, you had people, like several people in full up like Darth Maul, cosplay, with just, fantastic meat, and like people like, outside the theater, we were having like lightsaber battles in the parking lot. And, like it was just, it was crazy. In fact, I even met somebody who at the time was working for, what was it, ZDNet, Zip Davis?
Yep, Zip Davis, yeah.
Which back then was a rather popular like tech news site, and chatted up one of the journalists there, and she was there to report on the movie, and actually got a notebook that I still have this today. That like the outside of the notebook was from a printed circuit board, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Not a huge deal, but yeah, it was kind of a cool thing. But yeah, I mean, it was just such a I don't know how else to describe it. It was a fan circus. It was crazy.
Yeah. So now I want to ask you about. We'll talk about the movie and the aftermath next. I'll comment a bit on my experience with that. I had heard pretty much the same. I mean, I talked to people later on. This didn't happen for me. I talked to people later on who like basically they were camping out, be it in Boston or New York City or something like that. And like, literally, this is the first time they got laid. It was just, there was this community, like almost like a tent city, just they weren't homeless, but it was like a tent city building up around, the release of this film, just waiting for it. Some people waiting. Like I talked to one guy who was there for like a month and a half, and like he ends up getting a girlfriend out of the deal because they were kind of both camping there and everything. She broke up with the guy while he was there. I mean, this was nuts. People were like living their lives in line for this fucking movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
You have whole soldiers going on. In fact, I really, to this day, I think somebody should be making a movie just about those tent lines, for seeing this film, because I think there's so many people's lives changed at that point. Same with you, where I actually, and I've said this many times on Sovryn Tech, where that movie is like, that's a marker for a different life of mine.
Yeah.
Like there's life before episode 1, then there's life after, and those are two very different lives.
Yep.
Kind of very different lives for me. So I really like, I gauge, in fact, to this day, I still gauge all things as pre-99 and post-99. Now, I was just getting that was my last year of high school. In fact, it was one of the only days that I ever missed school. And I told my teachers openly, I said, no, I'm going to episode 1 first thing in the morning. Too bad. Like, let me know what the homework is beforehand, because I'm not going to be here. And they thought it was great. Like, they're like, oh, no, you're always here. Go ahead. Go have your fun. And I wasn't in line. Again, that wasn't a thing in Utica. But like the night before, me and a good group of buddies, we didn't sleep the night before. We literally did not sleep that entire night because we were so busy just talking about, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? And we were buying all the books, and we were looking at the back of the soundtrack and everything. And boy, when the soundtrack came out on May 2nd, like, that was huge. I was listening to that over and over again. Yeah. I knew the soundtrack well before I saw the movie,
Yeah, same here.
Were you the same?
I bought the soundtrack the day it was released.
Yeah,
and of course, it had that epic spoiler in it.
Oh yeah, where it said that pretty much Qui-Gon died, right?
Yeah, there was I think the name of the track was like the funeral of Qui-Gon Jinn or something like that.
Which it's like, oh well, okay.
Yeah,
yeah, that was a fuck up. So, but anyway, I just late long, didn't sleep at all. I actually 2 tickets. I bought it for like doing it must have been, they did an early show, like an 11 o'clock show, and then they did the next one was a 3 p.m. show, and I bought both of those back to back. Which I'll talk more about that when we talk about the movie itself. But the excitement level was, nothing could get more white hot for me, and perhaps to this day, nothing is fucking excited for this movie, to find. And I was just eating up every bit of everything that I could. Any book that came out about it, the source book, whatever. I was there. So anyway, now the movie go to see. You're at the screener for this, am I right?
Yeah, well, when I was scheduled to wait in line for my day was the day that they had, like I said, the screen with app for the Lucasfilm employees. I didn't actually get to go and see the movie. I was just there when they were coming out of the theater.
Right. Okay. So you see this movie. How are you feeling, if you can remember? How are you feeling, like, say, 15, 30 minutes, maybe even an hour in? How are you feeling about this?
Honestly, it took me a while to process it. I think I was just like, I wasn't negative towards it, but I was sort of like in a state of shock.
Okay.
And that's the best way I could describe it.
But you're watching what's
going on. Yeah. Like I was like going, okay, that happened, sort of like, holy shit, like, and like, in a way, and here again, I'm not like, this is something that I think kind of like episode 1 established is like, like the possible side effects of hype, because the way that we had built it up in our imaginations, there's no way that like any movie could have ever lived up to what we imagined.
Yeah. Yep. I agree.
And so that was,
it could have been the Force and it would live.
Right. Yeah. And so like that was basically where I was at. And I persisted in that state for, it must have been several days or a while, like, it wasn't, until I think it was the following weekend that I started, seeing different reviews about it online or in the news and whatnot. And that I was able to start, gauging sort of the wider reaction to it. And like, in a lot of ways, I was kind of like disappointed by, some of the stuff that was being written. In fact, I mentioned the journalist that I met in line going into the movie, and she wrote like a really kind of scathing article of it. I'm like, oh man, this is bad. This is like, and
right.
I remember especially there was one thing that kind of like just hit me really powerfully. And that, there was a lot of these accusations of sort of like, racist characters in episode 1s, like the Nemoidians and Jar Jar Binks and whatnot. And I was really disheartened by a lot of that kind of stuff. But there was a really good comic, and I don't remember if it was the San Francisco Chronicle or another newspaper. But anyway, there was this comic book strip, and that kind of sort of addressed that. And I don't remember exactly what it is, but basically it's somebody, going to the theater and saying, what can I expect to find in there? And then Yoda's kind of like standing outside the theater, and he said, only what you take with you.
Ouch.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
mean, like if you go into it, taking some of these sort of accusations of racism and sort of that, like certainly you're going to find that if you're looking for it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that can be true for a lot of things. I think
Right.
that's pretty wise. Yeah. Yeah. So when you, so a few days, like, so for that few days, are you just like, no, that was a good movie, and then you start reading the reviews and you're like, maybe this actually wasn't good? Was that what was going on?
Yeah, I think there was an element that I mean, like I honestly, like I don't even remember those days following the movie all that well. Here again, I think I was still just trying to process it. I hadn't really formed a strong opinion one way or another. I mean, I could tell you, like my initial reaction was like, and people, we all stood up and the movie got a standing ovation. And
Yeah.
but at the same time, there was just sort of like here again, like just this element of like taking in what I seen, because I mean, in a way, it was a very different movie from the original trilogy. I mean, there you can't argue that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
No, it
just
is.
kind of like taking that in and trying to sort of like fit it in with the rest of we knew about Star Wars, not just the original trilogy, but the expanded universe and all that stuff that we were really into at the time. It didn't quite 100% feel like it synced up at the time. It didn't quite fit in. And it wasn't until later on that we got more movies. And really, for me, like the Clone Wars animated series, that all this sort of kind of came together and became a cohesive universe again.
Yeah. So I saw it. I go in about like 15, 30 minutes. And I can remember thinking, I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going on. Here's the problem, though. Here's the thing where like reality hits hard. Now, again, I really like this movie, and I saw it over and over again, and I'll explain more. Here's where reality hit hard, is that the second time around, now granted, I didn't sleep the night before, like I said, but I fell asleep like 15 minutes into the movie the second time seeing it. And I didn't wake up until the pod race scene. And then I was fine and awake and everything. And I think that says a lot about the movie.
Right.
And now when I would see it again, I would see this movie, ultimately, I would see it 6 times in theaters. After the 4th time, I'm watching and I'm like, no, actually, this is actually pretty good. Like, you had to see it that many times, though. But you had to see it that many times, I think, to really appreciate everything that's going on and really take in everything that's going on, because this is a big tapestry that George Lucas is playing on. And the prequels in general are that way. And so I want to say that, like, at first it kind of hit me that, wow, this might not actually been good, but my fandom wouldn't let me not believe that.
Right.
But then after seeing it a few more times, then I'm like, okay, no, this is, but then I'm starting to realize that there's things about it that there's problems. But then overall, like, after seeing it over and over again, it's like, okay, I mean, and I don't know if I just like, brainwash myself or by watching it over and over again. But then, like, eventually I just learned, no, I really like this movie. But I had to see it that many times to really like it. So that was my initial experience of.
Yeah, I didn't see it that many times. I only saw it honestly, I think the one time, because I mean, like, here again, I was literally a starving student at the time. Like, living in San Francisco isn't cheap, and like just going to see one movie was a huge luxury.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like, how did you feel about it for those 20 years?
I kind of gave in to the hate train for a while. Especially because of like Jar Jar Binks. I had I ended up having a very negative reaction to that on subsequent viewings. And here again, like I said before, I kind of had a hard, you talk about George Lucas, like, and I agree with you. He was working on this really big tapestry, but at the same time, it's sort of like, it felt like Episode 1 was, like something that was torn out of the, another tapestry and pasted it in to the Star Wars universe that I know, and it didn't quite really it wasn't recognizable as recognizable as the rest of what I knew the Star Wars universe to be. And so for a long time, like I said, until, sort of like further movies and the animated series and the comic books were really able to fill out that time period and expand on it, that it really became part of the same universe for me.
So basically, it took it to have all of this like really, really make sense.
Yeah, it really did.
Like
I mean, like
that's
I have to give a lot of credit to the Clone Wars series. I mean, like, you know, I've even had other friends tell me, like, for them, like, the Clone Wars show saved the prequel era, and I don't go that far, but I could definitely, you know, relate to that experience of it. And there's certainly, you know,
right.
elements, you know, that I like. I feel like Anakin gets better represented in the Clone Wars than the take he got in the movies. And I think that's just in terms of the length of time that they had to explore the character in the show compared to what you get in a 2-hour movie.
So for the 20 years that you were describing, like when Clone Wars is out and all this, I mean, I loved the movie throughout that 20 years. So my experience of it is, what the hell is everybody complaining about? You know, like, I mean, some things I understood, like the idea that, okay, it's supposed to be a kid's movie, but then you're opening up in the opening dialogue with talking about taxation. What the fuck is that? Like, that's not a kid's movie, you know?
Right.
Like those arguments I understood. There's critiques that I really, really grasped, that I really got. And Jar Jar, nope, I don't like Jar Jar either. That doesn't mean that episode 1's a bad movie. There's plenty of movies where I can't stand certain characters.
Right.
So, you know, that was my experience of the past 20 years. And so I guess, and with that said, also my opinion of the movie has yet to really change, you know? So like how I feel about it now is no different than how I felt about it in 99, frankly. You know, my same arguments for why it's a good movie, for what I like about it, are all still the same. So I want to hear from you. You know, it took the Clone Wars over the past 20 years to really make it all come together. How do you feel about the movie now? Is there a different perspective you have on it?
Oh, absolutely. And actually, I have to give you credit for that too, because the way that you talked about the movie and your perspective on it, it was the first time that, you know, I was able to talk to somebody that, you know, I have a lot of great love and respect for, that was able to put it in terms that I could understand it, you know, from that positive viewpoint. Because for the longest time, I was just surrounded by people that hated the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, you know, I was a total follower. Here again, I had my criticisms too, but there were parts of it. I was a huge Liam Neeson fan, both before and after the movie. I loved the character of Qui-Gon Jinn. You know, yeah. I loved, you know, like the casting, you know, decisions in the movie were just truly inspired, you know, like with Obi-Wan too, like, you know, like the way that he picked up on Alec Guinness's, you know, speech patterns and mannerism. I thought he just did such a great job. And
yeah,
like, you know, like the design of the movie is exquisite. You know, I still like, you know, like one of the first things I picked up along with the soundtrack was the art book. Because, you know, obviously I'm, you know, I'm like, you know, I'm in art school. I'm going to pick up the Star Wars art book. No duh. But yeah,
Doug
I mean,
Chiang's work was amazing. I mean,
oh yeah, it really was. Doug Chiang, E. McKay, all those people, they're just brilliant artwork. And, you know, like I really like the design decisions they went with behind the movies, and that, you know, they were trying to go before everything got sort of run down and used, and they were going sort of like for that highly stylized sort of like, you know, 1950s style, like automobile look.
Yeah.
Like, especially with like, you know, the N1 Naboo starfighters and stuff like that. And I thought that was just so elegantly done and beautiful, and added a new dynamic and dimension to like the visual, you know, language of Star Wars.
Right.
And I thought that from the beginning, and I thought that all the way through. So I wasn't like, you know, a total hater, but, you know, yeah, like I give the Clone Wars, and I give, you know, your perspective on it a lot of credit for my growing appreciation of the movie.
Sure. I mean, and I think for, you know, a lot of fans, and you can tell me if this factors in for you as well. A lot of fans, now that episode 3 is not the last Star Wars movie, a lot of fans can just appreciate the prequels as other Star Wars movies. And they don't have to treat them as, fuck, I waited so long for more Star Wars and this is what I got.
Right.
So I think that's softened a lot of criticism and attitude towards those movies, because now there's not so much pressure on them, basically, to be like the great movies that they were, quote unquote, supposed to be. And for a lot of people, they weren't.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, way back in the day, George Lucas and some of the actors like Mark Hamill had talked about there not just being a prequel series, but a sequel series.
Mm-hmm.
And then, during, I think it was around the time of the prequels being production, George, went back on that and said, no, there's not going to be, this is it. This is after the prequel series is done, there's going to be no more Star Wars movies. So I think maybe if he had just, kind of held back on saying that, maybe the way people reacted to those movies in the first place would have been a lot different than the way they did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, do you think today that this movie has bumped up a bit on maybe some people's like ranking of greatest Star Wars films? Has it gone up?
Oh yeah, no, like I said, it's bumped up on mine. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't ever imagine now. I mean, there's something to be said for the fact that, there's a generation that grew up with those movies 1, 2, and 3 as their Star Wars movies.
Right.
And
they're adults now.
Right. I mean, and they fucking love those movies, and they can have very interesting rankings of where they put those films. I don't think that it's like episode 1's ever going to top somebody's list. I can't really imagine that, even with that generation. But I'm personally glad to see that 20 years later, it is getting some, what I think is well-deserved respect, for reasons that it wasn't initially, but also that now it can be recognized for the things you already loved about it back even in 99. And that those can be taken, as they are, and it can finally be, a very appreciated film. And that even like Ahmed Best, like we talked about this during Star Wars Celebration this year in 2019, how he finally got some, respect and standing for his part with Jar Jar,
Right.
and I think that's only a good thing.
Yeah.
Because go ahead.
Not only that, he prior to that, he had even put out a video about, his life after episode 1 and how it was kind of like a dark period in his life where he, even, contemplated suicide, and he started talking about this openly. And I think that was just a hugely important thing, definitely I feel kind of expanded for me the empathy I have for people working in creative industries and how much of themselves they put in their work. And I hope that more people would come out and talk about those kinds of experience, and that we could, just as a society, have more regard from the way we criticize artistic works and the degree that the artists put themselves in their artistic works, and the criticisms that we give them. I'm not proud of the way that I used to feel about Jar Jar Binks, and
Sure.
I think it's important that I feel that way.
Sure. No, that's fair. I mean, I always I didn't really like the character, much like I wouldn't like, I don't know, I didn't like Greedo either. So,
Yeah.
it'd be one of those situations. But yeah, I like the hatred that he got, and like the Phantom edit and all this different stuff that happened over the past 20 years. I was always like, oh guys, like that's pushing it. And I was rooting for, I love the idea of, what was it? Darth Jar Jar, right? Where he was actually the guy behind
Right.
everything. I was always like, no, let's do that. That'd be great.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like the part where Jar Jar was in any way, if I didn't really like the character or like really was annoyed by the character, it was more in the Clone Wars, frankly, than it was in episode 1 or episode 2. But whatever, I mean, like that's fine. But yeah, it's just, I feel like this movie 20 years on is finally getting its due. It's getting justice, shall I say. And it's important to remember, like you brought up, you kind of mentioned earlier about how movies years later can have a different perspective, and can be seen very differently. Like one of the greatest movies ever made, Cleopatra, is a movie that is looked on much kinder by the entirety of the industry today than it ever was when it was getting made.
Yeah, it was bomb when it came out, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there was some ugliness around this movie, and now it's considered an absolute classic, rightfully fucking so. And I mean, and there was so much bad press around it, like what was happening with Elizabeth Taylor, what was going on with all this, and now it's given the credit for the grandeur and for everything about it that it deserves. And I think episode 1, while not Cleopatra, it's getting that due, and it just takes that time. It's a fine wine, shall we say?
Yeah,
it really is.
Well, I think it also kind of highlights for us the grain of salt we should take entertainment, journalism.
Yes, absolutely.
And sort of like all the hot takes that we have, going back for decades now that people have had on just all kinds of TV, movies, what have you. I hate to say this, but I kind of have a feeling like maybe 10 years from now, people are going to be talking about, oh no, I loved Game of Thrones all the way through up until the end, even though it was shit from the beginning, but whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, that can happen. Tastes change, lots of things change. Sometimes society isn't ready for something or whatever happens. Yeah, that's a good point to bring up, and a good warning on that. The entertainment journalism, especially the institutionalized entertainment journalism, I think be very cautious around that, because you don't know where the money's flowing with that. You don't know what the biases are, what the goals are, the aims are. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that there's more profit for those organizations in tearing down something that's popular, or making a, something dramatic or sensationalizing something that plays in their favor. Than it does to actually, be honest.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, go where the, you want to listen to stuff, what's going down, go listen to the passionate fans, not to the, I don't know, whoever's working at, I'll say it, whoever's working at Gizmodo this week. Don't fucking go to them.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up, because there's a guy I follow on YouTube, and he was talking about, what are the game journalists going to talk about now that Game of Thrones is over, because they spend more time talking about Game of Thrones than they do actually about video games. I'm like, damn good point.
Yeah, right on. Oh man, it's such an ugly thing. So, but fortunately, episode 1 is no longer being seen as an ugly thing. It's, again, I think it's getting the recognition that it's due. And yeah, any other comments you want to make on episode 1? I mean, we're 20 years deep now in this movie. What kind of closing thoughts do you have, Rob?
It is nice now that we live in an era where the Star Wars fandom does feel a little bit more cohesive, and that there was such a huge divide before in between whether you liked the prequels or you didn't. If I know for some people it was heresy to be a prequel trilogy fan. They still went out and paid and saw all the movies on opening day, but right. you were a filthy casual Star Wars fan if you actually liked those movies. Now it's finally nice to see that's no longer the case.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And I have been appreciating Disney's constant fealty to the prequels. And I mean, they really have. Even in something as simple as Star Wars Resistance, there's so many episode 1 references in that show alone. It's really, it's remarkable actually how many there are, or the amount of content written about Padme, about Padme Amidala.
Right. We're getting another season of the Clone Wars. I mean, I mean, I can't think of, a greater way to appreciate that time period.
Yeah. And who would have thought that back then, that the most exciting thing the thing that would get the most cheers out of people, say at a Star Wars event, was the announcement of, we're going to get more Clone Wars. Who would have thought that,
Right.
I mean, even 15 years ago, nobody would have thought that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I told you, I'm actually looking forward to that more than I am episode 9.
Yeah, damn right. I mean, it's exciting shit. So yeah, I mean, and that's, real quick on that. Like, I mean, another parallel for this is like Ahsoka Tano. Oh, you think that sucks now? You just wait. You're gonna love this character. Just give it time.
Right.
And that's the thing is I think it do us well to sit on things for a little bit, before we're a little too harsh.
Yeah.
On some of what comes out. Just go ahead.
And I've had to tell people, like, I even had some friends years ago who balked at the fact that I was even watching the Clone Wars series, and they thought it was just a total kiddie affair. And I'm like, oh no, bullshit. Once you watch like the whole Darth Maul arc, and especially the episodes on Dathomir with the Night Sisters and stuff, that's some dark shit, man. That's great. Like, that is not kiddie stuff.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree. I completely agree with that. So, well, anyway, I'm glad that, again, that it's getting it's finally, like you said, it's experiencing a renaissance 20 years later, and people are on board with this thing, or at least they're starting to appreciate it. And I couldn't be happier about that. So anyway, I guess we'll end this off, unless you have anything else, Rob.
No.
Okay. Yeah, we can end this off. This is probably the longest episode of TFR ever. I think we were clocking it at about 3 hours here.
Oh, wow. So, yeah, we did.
Which, rock and roll, baby. We got a whole month's worth of stuff to talk about, and we actually review the comic books unlike other shows. So anyway, but I guess we'll end it off with the question that we either start or end the show with, which is, Rob, how are you feeling about Star Wars right now in May of 2019?
I'm feeling cautiously optimistic about some things, very excited for others, and I think we already brought all those things up. So, sort of like I'm definitely really excited for the new season of the Clone Wars and the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to episode 9, but for various reasons, not all have to do with the movie. But feeling pretty good.
Same. I'm going to say pretty good. I like that. I'm feeling pretty good about Star Wars overall. And I've been pleased with a lot of the extraneous content. Again, the Age of comics, the 2 productions that we talked about, Master and Apprentice, Dooku, Jedi Lost. Those have been fantastic. I'm pleased with what I'm getting in Star Wars land right now. So anyway, we'll wrap this baby up. Rob, as always, I want to quote Charles Dickens or something, but it's not the worst of times. It's fucking best of times. Just straight up, we can just cut the sentence off right there. Whether Star Wars is doing well or not, this is the fucking best time.
Yeah, so, well, I mean, we've always said that Star Wars is like Star Wars is always going to be great. Like they can't take away anything that's come before, and we can always appreciate and love and enjoy the experience of that stuff for all of eternity.
Damn right. So great, always doing the show with you, because we'll always have TIE Fighter, and that's why all of you will always have TIE Fighter Renegades. We'll see all of you on the other side. Woo! Can you get enough of the Man of Tomorrow? I didn't think so. Well, now you're going to get even more, along with some of the hottest hosts and podcasts around, because now Sovryn Tech has become an entire network. Zomia ONE, the most rebellious podcast network in the galaxy, with bleeding edge shows covering science, technology, and even pop culture. Podcasts like Sovryn Trek, bringing you the latest and greatest in everything Star Trek. TIE Fighter Renegades, a Star Wars podcast, where the Man of Tomorrow and Robin Freebeard talk Star Wars like no other show out there. The Hard and Fast podcast, where metal is king, and the latest album reviews and interviews with the greatest acts in hard rock and heavy metal happen. And you can even become a member of the Zomia ONE Underground and get access to thousands of hours of exclusive content and shows. And this isn't Patreon, baby. Oh no, this is all happening on the premier podcast platform, Podbean. So head over to ZomiaOne.com, that's ZomiaOne.com, and become a part of the future with Zomia ONE, and become a member of the Zomia ONE Underground. And while you're at it, download the Podbean app on iOS and Android. Be the future. ZomiaOne.com.